I started in with this muzzleloader, wind blowing, everything, and I got in. I didn't go very far, and I come in, and there was 5 of these big poplar trees that had all blown down.
Yep.
And they were all laid, like when they blow down, they usually go down in bunches here in Maine woods, and they got very shallow root systems, so the stumps are laid up. And I'm looking at that mess, and it's all cedar swamp blowdowns, and that buck kind of went in between them stumps. And I'm thinking, and it was all limbs in there, and I'm thinking, man. And I looked, I couldn't really get around either side. It was so thick. I said, I'll jump right on that tree. I'll just jump on that tree and walk right up that tree. I used to do that when I was younger all the time, walk on trees everywhere. And I jumped up, and I'm on that tree, and I'm carrying this muzzleloader. You know, I got it in my hand, and I'm kind of walking along that tree, and I'm looking where I'm going, and I look down below me, and he's laying right in them limbs. And
you're on the tree above him?
I'm on the tree above him. I'm
Yeah.
about 6 feet above this buck, and,
Yeah.
and he reminded me of my big 242-pound 8-pointer, really wide, heavy beams. And I swung onto him, and cap went off. That was it. And man, the minute that cap went off, scared the shit out of him. So he bails out of there. He comes jumping right up at eye level.
No way.
Yeah, and there was all these young, like maple or popples growing in amongst where those blowdowns were. His rack was so wide, when he come up, his left beam hooked onto a tree, and it flipped him right around, and he started going in circles. So
Just spinning around.
Yeah, so I immediately switched ends, and I was swinging, and I missed him by like an inch.
This episode is brought to you by Huntstock, America's reinvented hunting show and the world's largest deer camp. Visit www.huntstockevents.com for more details. We hope to see you there. Big Woods Bucks team member Rick Labbe, a descendant of the famous Comanche Indian war leader Quanah Parker, by the way, is one of the best all-around woodsmen and hunters in North America today. He lives life to the fullest, loving his family, working hard, and hunting and fishing as much as he can. He's shot 7 whitetail bucks grossing over 170 inches and over 50 bucks that weighed more than 200 pounds, with 2 of those weighing in at over 300 pounds. At least 26 200-pounders were taken in the hard-to-hunt Northeast by tracking. He's gone a perfect 20 for 20 with bull elk tags, harvesting mostly mature 6x6s. He's taken 8 bull moose, 18 black bear, with 3 of those over 500 pounds, a grizzly bear, more than 200 bobcats, hundreds of coyotes, 3 mountain lions, a wolf, and countless trophy North American game. When he hunts the Northeast, he's partial to the ancient art of tracking, perhaps because of his Indian ancestry, and he also enjoys archery hunting, spot and stalking, using his muzzleloader, and running hounds. He's a great backcountry snowmobiler, he rides horseback, and he can fix most anything that breaks down. It is my sincere pleasure to bring to you this discussion. Here he is, Rick Labbe. Well, welcome back to another episode of the Hunt Suburbia podcast, and I'm sitting here with legendary hunter Rick Labbe. Thanks for joining me, Rick.
Yeah, thanks, Patrick. Appreciate you coming up.
Oh, I appreciate it. Just walked around your beautiful trophy room. What do you call it? Trophy room, hunting room? What's your term for this?
Probably my trophy room. I built this for an office because we needed an office in another bedroom because we ended up having another daughter. And I said, why not build it big enough to be a trophy room to hold my deer heads? So,
well, if anybody could build a trophy room, it's you. You're a builder, right? A contractor.
Well, yeah, I'm more of a earthwork contractor. Yeah.
But you built your house, this whole thing by yourself, right?
I did build the house. I didn't build this addition, but the whole main house I built myself when I was 23.
Yeah, and we were just talking about it when I pulled up.
Yeah.
I think you got the whole thing done for what? 20, 30,
46,000 bucks.
46,000 bucks.
Built my house back then.
Yeah.
Pounded every nail myself.
Yeah. And I think some of the biggest savings probably is on the craftsmanship, though. If you paid somebody to do what you've done to this place, that's where the big bucks come in.
I wired the entire house, did all the plumbing. You know, growing up, my dad had 40 apartment buildings. So, you know, work ethic got instilled in me from a young age. When I was probably 12 years old, he had me working on boilers and doing electrical work in these apartment buildings he owned all over Waterville. So we were constantly going to fix stuff, and he had me, put them pipes together, and you either learned or you didn't, and
Yeah.
so, and that stuff, you think when you're a kid, you're like, oh man, I don't want to do that stuff. But as you get older in life, you go, wow, that really saved me a lot of money and a lot of time. And anybody in the family has a problem, they'll call me up. Hey, this is leaking. Or that, we had a problem with that. I can go fix it.
Well, you learned a lot from that too, right? Like you're a jack of all trades in that sense, and when it comes to hunting, you are too. Because, I was listening to something the other day where they were talking about how as hunters we've been around for, it's debatable whether it's 10,000 years or 100,000 years, the human species, right? And hunting was a huge part of everything. It was every single human that lived.
That's how you survived.
Hunting was their entire lifestyle.
Right.
But now we've become specialized, and hunting isn't a part of everybody's daily lifestyle, and everybody's gone into these crazy specializations, right?
Yeah.
You've got somebody who's a robotics engineer, so just crazy amounts of specialization.
Right.
And in the hunting world, that can happen too, where somebody will just want to be a bow hunter, or somebody will just want to track, or somebody will,
Right.
and they'll stick to one thing, get really good at it. But you're unique in that you're
I
a
pretty
well-rounded
much,
woodsman.
Yeah, I do it all. I like to hunt every season. I love to bow hunt. I don't bow hunt in Maine so much anymore because I don't want to lose my tracking season. But I bow hunt out of state quite a bit. I've actually switched over to a crossbow because I tore my shoulder and couldn't pull my brand new bow back 3 years ago. So I ended up getting a doctor's note on that. So I've got a crossbow permit now, and I love using that crossbow. And I just killed a big elk with it last week in Wyoming. But whether it's muzzleloader, and that's another one of my favorite seasons is muzzleloader. You just see so many big bucks during muzzleloader, and it's the challenge. It's not about killing; it's the challenge of the hunt, really, to pursue an animal with a muzzleloader or with a bow and kill it, because it closes the distance, and you're more on their playing field than stretched out with a rifle. Everything changes. So it just makes it that much more challenging, that much more fun. It just makes you want to do it. When muzzleloaders years ago, they never went off. So now they're a lot better.
Yeah.
But I can tell you some stories about a few that never went off. I got a lot of them.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And do you kind of liken it to how, because you're a big fisherman too.
Yeah.
I know you love fishing. And your mother loved fishing too, and I want to talk about her a little bit too. Actually, why don't we, because last night you had the celebration of life for your mom.
Yeah, we
Virginia,
did yesterday.
Right?
Yeah.
And so she recently passed, and sorry to hear about that. Do you want to just tell people a little bit about what your mom meant to you?
Yeah. So when I grew up as a kid, we had a camp up in Ironbound Pond, which is about 30 miles north of here in Solon. And we had an old tar paper shack for a camp. We had more damn fun in that camp than probably any camp I ever built. And it had an outhouse, and we had a hand pump for water. And my brother and I, we were talking about it last night, we actually there wasn't enough room in that old camp for us to sleep. So we had a camper up the driveway in the parking lot up top. And my brother and I would sleep in the camper at night, and my sister too. But growing up, we'd brook fish all around Bingham, the Forks, just every single day, every trout stream. My mother just loved to catch brook trout and fly fish and all that. She was a heck of a fisherman, heck of an outdoorsman, probably one of the best brook trout fishermen I ever met in my life. And we were talking yesterday at her thing. She'd tell everybody for Christmas, she said, "Don't buy me any jewelry. Buy me either flies or tackle." So, and you'd see her eyes light up when she'd open, a box of Super Dupers or something. She, oh man, that's just what I wanted. So
that made Christmas easy, didn't it?
Oh yeah, made it real easy. Yeah.
So what is the Super Duper? I saw that you posted that was her favorite lure.
Yeah, the Super Duper's it's got a little red end on it with a treble hook, and it's shaped like the letter U, and it's kind of got a little fluttering motion, and I think the red on the end makes it look like a wounded piece of bait, with the blood. And boy, that's a hot brook trout I lure in Labrador. I mean, even Maine. Growing up, I can remember my mom always used super dupers almost everywhere we went.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's great. And did she hunt at all? Did your mom ever hunt?
She hunted a little bit when she was younger. She shot a moose with me up in Zone 4 one year, and she made a hell of a shot on it. We come over a hill there up by Northeast Cary, and we were in this chop and driving in, and there was a bull running, and she jumped out and shot him right in the head, killed him dead right there.
Nice.
Yeah, that was the only moose she ever killed. I think she might have killed a deer or two when I was a kid. Can't really remember that, but she didn't hunt that much. Her love was fishing and snowmobile, and she loved to snowmobile. She was well known in Jackman for all the miles and all the she took care of all the trails, all the signs.
Oh yeah, good.
Everything. Yeah, she worked with Hal quite a bit up there, putting signs up every year. Mom and Dad live about a mile from me, and right after Christmas every year they'd move to Jackman and run their snowmobile rental business up there.
Nice.
Yeah, and they had like 45 sleds they rented out. And so as soon as she moved up there, her and Hal would get together because deer season was over, and her and Hal would put signs out.
Oh, great.
You could always tell when Hal put a sign out, it was up here, and Mom put them out when they were down here.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, she was like 5'4", and what's Hal, like 6'3" or something?
He's tall.
Yeah, he's tall, yeah.
So, as a member of the Big Woods Bucks team, talk a little bit about how you got into the Big Woods Bucks team and what and how and
So
from them. How did you get into tracking and all that stuff?
Yeah. Oh, I started tracking. That was just instilled in my blood, I think, because nobody in my family ever tracked deer that I've ever known. I started it, and when I was a kid, there was a guy named Leroy Lane that lived over east of here, over near my hunting camp, and he was a heck of a tracker back then. And I can remember walking up, I was probably 12 years old, 11 or 12 years old one day, hunting with Dad, and I was way down in on Martin Stream, and I came across what we call Pine Point Rapids, and there was Leroy standing there in this big 220-pound 8-pointer, big heavy beams on him laying there, and I says, how'd you get him? He says, well, I've been tracking him, he says, all day long. He says, I finally killed him right here. And boy, that stuck in my head. And from that day on, I was determined I was going to learn how to track. So I started tracking when I was about 11 years old, actually. And Dad used to turn me loose, and, he didn't know where I was going to end up at the end of the day on a deer track. But over here, the block of woods we hunt in is probably 3 miles by 5 miles. So he'd find me eventually just driving around on one of the roads at night somewhere.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And but no, I started and learned it all on my own by trial and error. And that's one thing about Big Woods Bucks is nowadays, I think back to when I was a kid, and it took me all those years to learn what I know. And nobody would teach you. Nobody would tell you how to track. It was like everybody kept their secrets to themselves, even the old guys. And so, it's kind of nice because I love teaching guys what I know, because you got to pass it on.
Yeah.
If you don't pass it on, it's gone forever.
Yep.
So, that's one great thing that Hal does and taught us all. And so getting back to Big Woods, I've always known Hal, meeting him in Jackman, because I had a camp up there my whole life. And from the time I was 7 years old, I always fished and hunted with my grandfather, Richard. We called him Pepe. And he was a hell of a fisherman, never a hunter. And so I always knew Hal from the time he moved to Jackman, and we'd run into each other all the time. We'd tell a few deer stories, and he'd go into the shop and see Dad all the time, and they'd exchange deer stories on what we shot for bucks and all that. And then, I don't know, it's probably 20 years ago when I was into the coyote. I was running coyotes with hounds. I was one of the first guys in the state of Maine that actually started running coyotes when we lost all our deer herd there back in like 99, 2000. And I got into it pretty heavy trying to kill the coyotes off up north. And Hal called me up one day and he says, hey, I got a guy that wants to go hunting. Do you want to guide him? And I said, yeah, sure. So a friend of mine, Matt Clements, now he's a really good friend of mine, but so he was the first client I had, and we took him coyote hunting that day, and then Hal started coyote hunting with me quite regular then, and Matt and I actually became friends, and he's got his own hounds now, and I could name off 20 guys that have come with us all over the years that all have their own hounds now, and so I kind of started a pretty good tradition.
You guys are shooting hundreds of them too,
Oh,
aren't you?
yeah. We used to shoot, and even those guys in Chapman, the guys up there usually shoot between 35 and 50 a year. So that's about it average for a group of guys to kill.
Yeah.
So if you take, 8 or 10 groups of guys and they're all hunting deer yards, that's quite an impact on coyotes. And, that's why I attribute that to what a great, strong deer population we have now up north is coyote hunting. They got to be controlled, and it's a great thing. And the most efficient way to kill a coyote is with a hound. So, yeah.
I'll tell you that when I went to the Big Woods Buck Spring Thaw you guys did this year, my business partner Pat Burns and I went to go check on a deer yard because we wanted to try to find a shed. It was so much snow up there. We ended up coming down kind of in this neck of the woods where the snow broke a little bit, and we ended up finding a nice big deadhead. But up closer to Jackman, we checked a deer yard that was fairly accessible. Asked the lady who was property abutted it if we can go in there.
Yeah,
I went into that was the first main deer yard that I'd been into, and the deer sign in there, obviously it's crazy. They're all yarded there. It's just you can't step in it. But I had 2 or 3 coyotes just shadowing me pretty much the entire time. Yeah. So that's what they do is sit there and pick off those deer.
People don't understand it, but when a coyote, they follow all the deer to the yard because that's where the food is. So they live with those deer 24/7. They constantly circling, constantly moving them, bothering them. So deer don't get to lay down and with no stress like they used to years ago.
Yeah.
And that's why we had such big racks in Maine. It's because the stress level was very low in the winter.
That's interesting, yeah, the stress.
Exactly. And stress is all about horn growth and how your body works. So they're so run down come spring that's when coyotes do probably 90% of their killing is in March when we get those big snowstorms, and they've just been wearing those deer down all winter, just chasing them and bothering them and all that. And you get a few stragglers, and the bucks are the first ones. They get tired the quickest because they've lost so much weight.
Yeah.
So you get a big storm, 2 feet of snow, they'll pick off. I've seen as many as gone into a yard in the morning, see 12 deer dead. And people say, oh, they'll only kill what they eat. That's totally wrong. They're going to kill as many as they can because they'll feed off those for the next 3 or 4 months. But I've actually seen them leave deer and not even touch them again after they've killed them, and the birds ate them. So that theory doesn't hold true.
Well, when you're seeing that'll turn you into a coyote hunter real quick, right?
Oh,
if you walk into a yard and there's 12 dead deer.
Yeah, especially, some big mature bucks that, have lived 6 or 7 years, and you see them dead. It's pretty sad.
Yeah, and that's a difference, too, from up here and down in Massachusetts, where I live. A mature buck doesn't get killed by coyotes down there very often.
Right.
But we don't have the snow. They're not all yarded up.
You don't have the snow depth. And if you do, it doesn't last.
Yep.
See, here it lasts. It just keeps building up.
Yeah.
And then you get those layers underneath, so that you don't have that soft snow on top. You get that layer they punch through, and they get tired quick. So that's what kills them.
Yep.
Yeah.
Cool, yeah. So I know Hal's been getting into coyote hunting and a bunch of other guys up there, too.
Yeah.
That's great.
They got a good group up there. I actually don't have any. 2 years ago, my best one died, and I ended up getting rid of my other 2, and I find as I get older, I just got more stuff to do, and I love bobcat hunting. I've hunted bobcat from the time I was 7 years old with Dick Drysdale, and Dick was kind of like a father to me growing up, and just a great guy, great outdoorsman, everything. And he would come pick me up at 7 years old every night. He had an old green Ford F-100, and we had a strike cage on the front and a dog box in the back. and we'd put a hound in the strike cage, and it was all cornfields around here back then, all farms, and we'd kill 10 coon every single night. And we'd do that the whole month of October and usually the first week or two of November, and we'd kill around 100 to 150 coons every year. And I'd spend Sundays just skinning coons with him all day Sunday. So when guys see me on these videos skinning animals, I've had a lot of practice over the years, 50 years of skinning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's after this, I'm gonna go do a expanded archery hunt that you're putting me into a spot, and you said, hey, if you get one, bring it back. We can debone it really fast. I've got a lot of help. A lot of practice.
I grew up in high school. When I was 17, I got a job over in Winslow. There was a beef boning factory over there called Alco Packing, and I worked there. I'd get out of school at 2:30, drive over there. My shift started at 3. I worked 3 to 11 boning beef on a meat bench for 2 years at night, and inside of a cooler,
Yeah.
And you could, when you got good at it, you could bone an entire side of beef in 20 minutes.
Wow.
All deboned. And, you'd throw all your different cuts into different barrels, and they went out, and then they custom cut them.
Wow.
So
what's a deer take you?
Well, probably a little longer because you got to skin it.
Yeah, and you care about it a little bit more.
Yeah, you got to skin it. But that elk I killed last week, from start to finish, skinning him, quartering him all out, taking all the meat out, and then I like to drag all my quarters about 100 feet away from my kill. And what I do is I usually leave a piece of clothing there with human scent on it. And another trick is I'll take a leak, on a tree or two around it.
Yeah.
So it leaves that human scent right there. And they'll always go and feed on the carcass first.
Who's they? Grizzlies,
wolves, birds,
Yeah.
you name it. They're all predators, you know. But I've been lucky. We've only had one bear come to an elk kill.
There he is.
In 20 years. Yeah, no, that wasn't him. But and that was actually he looked like a grizzly. He was a black bear, but he was that cinnamon colored. And a friend of mine we told him where to go, and he come out. Tim come out hunting one year to Wyoming. We sent him down into where we thought there'd be some bulls, and he run into that carcass, and that bear was standing on top of it. And that bear, when he saw him, started huffing at him, and pounding up and down on top of it. And he run back to camp. He was running so fast he almost ran through camp. So
I would be.
Yeah, but yeah, it was a big bear, probably 400 pounds. So yeah, scared the hell out of him for a minute.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Well, why don't we talk about your elk hunt since it's fresh in your mind and just happened? I mean, first of all, how many elk have you killed?
I've been going. I think it's 20 years. Just this year, I started in Colorado, and I've killed 20 bulls. 20 years.
No shit.
Yeah. And I mean, I've killed a few raghorns, but almost all my bulls have been 6x6s or 5x6s. I've killed one 6x7 that I just put in my camp. I just picked it up last week when I was in Wyoming and put it in the camp. And he's a really nice bull, biggest one I ever killed. But I do it myself. I just love doing everything myself. I don't really hire outfitters for anything unless it's, deer hunting and you got to go through an outfitter. But I like to do my own thing. I like to stalk and spot, and that's the way I hunt. I'm not really a sitter at all.
And with muzzleloader, with rifle, with a mix and with a bow.
Mix of everything. Yep. So we horsebacked in, got out to Wyoming, and I rent horses off this neighbor of mine out there named Wade. His dad was Donnie, Salt of the Earth guy, and Donnie passed away last summer. And so Wade Rogers, he's got the horses now. So he brings us the horses up to the trailhead, we call it, and unloads them. And he helps me get, the pack gear loaded and tie everything up. And I kind of learned all that stuff from him because once you get in there, you got to repack all the horses yourself.
Yep.
And so wrangling, saddling, everything I learned from these guys just watching. And so we ride in about 9 miles, and my buddy Todd Boyer that lives out in Wyoming, the way it works is if I don't draw a regular tag, sometimes there's leftover tags. And the only way you can hunt with a leftover tag, which is a wilderness tag, is you have to know a resident, and they can actually go get a guide's license. They're not actually a guide, but they just go buy a guide's license for $1, and they sign you up. And every resident's allowed to sign up 2 guys.
Yeah.
So I've been fortunate with Todd. He loves to hunt, and I've taught Todd pretty much everything I know, and he's becoming a great hunter. And so he's always game to go with me. I can call him anywhere I want to go, and he'll go.
Yeah.
So I drew a 97 wilderness tag, and I said, hey, Todd, you want to go in and hunt 97 again? And we hunted it last year. I killed a pretty good bull in there. And I called him. I said, you want to go in again? Last year was a rough trip.
Yeah.
Really rough. I was the only one to kill one out. So I was kind of skeptical, wondering if he'd want to go. But so he said, oh, yeah, of course we will. And we horsebacked in 9 miles, set up tent. And that next morning we woke up, and the 3 of us talked. Toby, Thomas was with me, and Todd, and we all headed different directions. So I headed up over the mountains to a spot where I killed a bull like 5 or 6 years ago. I killed a 5x6. And I got up in there. It was about 3 hours from camp by the time I got all the way up into where I wanted to go, like 5 different ridges. And I bugled quite a bit, never got a response. I did see a raghorn there, like a 4x4, running away from me once. I saw a couple of cows, but no bull around. I watched them for a while, and if there's a bull around, you'll usually see them. They kind of hang off to the side. But I really like bugling, and I like to call them in if I can.
Yeah.
So I bugled in this one huge valley, and I know this elk heard me, but he didn't say a word. And as I got closer, I got right on top of him, and he answered me. Well, when you're away from a big bull like that, and when the rut starts, lots of times they're not going to answer you because they don't want to give their location up. If they've got a cow there that they want to breed,
Yep.
they're not going to let this other bull a mile away say, hey, come over here.
Yeah.
So they pretty tight mouth. So when you get right on top of them like that, you kind of challenge them. So I come over this knob, and I bugled, and he just kind of let a squeal out back at me, and I went, ooh. And it almost didn't sound like an elk, but a lot of those big ones, they're that way. They just squeal. And so I hurried real quick, because the minute you call, most of the time they're already coming. They're coming to you.
Is the squeal kind of like a bark?
No,
but I heard when I was in
Yeah.
North Dakota, it was just a
Yeah, yeah.
almost like, but a different sound.
Yeah,
than that.
and some of the calls I do, it's like just a short, just roh, 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 roh.
Yeah,
You know,
kinda
they'll,
like a
they'll
moose
give
a
out
little
2 or
bit.
3 of those.
Yeah.
Like I call it a chuckle, but it is like a bark. You're right. And so I got around the edge of this knob, big rock knob, had some trees on it and a bunch of blowdowns and debris. And I got around that rock knob, and there was a shelf right there, and I couldn't really jump down. And I looked, and I could see this mountain ahead of me, this hillside, probably 200 yards away to the next mountain. And I just moved, and I see a little bit of hide there. So I pulled my binoculars up, and there was a cow there. So I said, oh, he's right there with that cow. Yeah. So I looked around, and there was a fir tree there to kind of block my outline. I settled into that spot, and I just hit my call real quick. Well, one answered me kind of up top. Mm-hmm. He was like 200 yards away. I couldn't see him. So I'm looking. I said, yeah, I got a good shot. I said, this is perfect. Wind was kind of cutting me like this. And I said, he'll have to come right around before he can smell me. So I'm sitting there, and I said, yeah, I ought to try to video if I can get it on video. So I had my phone out, and I was just setting it down behind me, and I caught something to my left, and I looked, and here comes antlers at 25 yards. And there was kind of a boulder there, and that video is going to come out in a couple of weeks.
On Big Woods Bucks YouTube page?
On Big Woods Bucks, yeah.
Yep.
So, and immediately I went, oh. And I didn't expect him to come out because I was watching for this bull up here, so I just laid the phone down. I didn't get anything on video on the shot. And I grabbed my bow, and he walked right up, went past me, and there was a little short group of firs in that draw. He went up, and he just starts raking the heck out of a pine.
Yeah.
I mean, staving the limbs off it, and he's going and going. And I couldn't shoot him because there was an old dead log that was laid across, and I could see his spine, and then I could see way under, right in the kill zone was that log, and I was on my knees. So I watched him for like 3 minutes raking. Then he moved to the next tree, and he started raking that, and he was still in line with that log. And I'm looking at him thinking, man, if he moves ahead, I'm never going to get a shot, and then he's going to go up around and he's going to win me. I said, I got to try to shoot him right now. And so I, real slow, he started raking again, and I just stood up, and it gave me about a 8-10 inch window. There was a fir here and a tree here.
Yeah.
And I said, if I can sneak an arrow right there. So I stopped and just immediately just boom, and shot him. Well, I heard this thud. I went, and he runs uphill, and he just stands there.
Yeah. I seen that footage.
Yeah,
Right?
he stands there, and I'm thinking, I missed him.
Yeah.
Right, I heard the thud, and I said, my arrow had to have hit in that little fir tip. And I said, deflected it, because I heard that thud. And I'm like, damn. I said, well, I might as well video him. I said, he's going to see me. I said, I'd rather just I'll video him, let him walk off, and maybe I'll get another chance at him. So I picked my phone up like that, and I turned it on video. And then as soon as I put it on video, and you can hear me, and then I'm going, yeah, I don't know if I hit him or not. And then pretty soon he does this.
Yeah.
And I go, oh, I got him. And then I could see the blood, and his lungs were filling.
Yep.
And the blood's actually, if you zoomed in, it's squirting out of the hole because his lungs are filling. And then he just goes over. So I'm like,
That was
yeah,
great.
I got him, And
Yeah.
yeah, he was a nice 6x6, and not a giant, but a giant to me for a bow. He was a giant. And,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and just the whole hunt was just, what people dream about their
It
whole
looked
life.
like pretty rugged,
It's
bouldery after boulder.
It is. It's rugged country, and I don't know how many more years I'll be able to hunt in there, but I hope at least 10 because I love it out there.
Well, if you can bring in, you're going in on horseback, that saves the knees a little bit, though, doesn't it?
Saves them a lot.
Do you use the same horse? Do you have a bond with the horse or something? You go with the same one year
Pretty
after year
much.
if you can?
I got this horse Red that I ride. I've been riding him for 7 or 8 years, and yeah, he knows me.
That's
Every
good.
time I show up, he knows who I am.
Yeah.
They do. The horses, they can sense that they know who you are. They don't forget.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. I got a really good horse story I'll tell real quick. I was hunting in Idaho.
All right, folks, standing here with Rick Labbe. Just did the podcast again. That was an awesome podcast. Thanks for coming on. Rick has been with Big Woods Bucks at Huntstock the first 2 years in Massachusetts. I just wanted to kind of get your thoughts on what's your experience been like at Huntstock these first couple of years.
I was kind of blown away this year when I went to Huntstock. The amount of people that showed up and just the venues have tripled, and the amount of people you meet that hunt, and different faces around all of New England and stuff, all the different hunters and blood trackers, everybody, and actually meet all these people face to face, shake their hands. Lanny Benoit was there, just hundreds of different guys. Rodney Elmer, Connecticut Kyle, one of my favorite guys, and it was just Joe Donito and all the Big Woods Bucks guys. We're all there, and I mean, it's one of the best times I think we have all year. It's just a phenomenal show, and you've done a great job building it. I expect it to be bigger next year. And one thing that's nice about Huntstock is you can actually go there, put your hands on a lot of this gear that everybody's selling instead of ordering online, and then you get it and you got the wrong size, or you're disappointed in it, or something else, or you say, oh, I wish I'd got the other one. You can actually put your hands on it, buy it right there, talk to the people about it. And I tell you what helps a lot too is guys like me that actually use all the gear all the time, put a lot of info in, and then they go, oh yeah, that's a good idea, and they change a lot of this gear to fit what we want.
Oh yeah.
And we've seen that in the last 2 years. I mean, we've even done some changes on some of our stuff because of hunters and us guys on Big Woods say, oh no, this won't work, we need this.
Oh yeah,
So-
Ruger, Mossberg was there.
Yeah.
I know you guys have done that with OnX, where you give them inputs and then they'll change.
Yeah.
For the northeastern hunter, which has been overlooked a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Everything's built for the western style hunter or the
Right.
Midwest hunter. But
Yeah.
I know Ruger, one of the biggest things they liked about Huntstock last year was all the input from guys like you.
Yeah.
And the really good hunters of the Northeast on how they could improve or design
Yeah.
a new type of
Because
gun.
you try something and immediately you know if it's going to work or not.
Yeah.
And or you say, boy, I wish this had another pocket, or just like our packs, we ended up putting shoulder straps on. To me, that's the biggest improvement right there, because I don't want that weight on my hips.
Yeah.
And it's like day and night now.
Yeah.
So,
So I mean, Huntstock was just kind of built for everybody to come together for a weekend in the summer. We all have our deer camps or our traditions in the winter to hunt and fall, but come together in the summer. So you've got a whole bunch of little mini deer camps coming together, and it feels like one giant deer camp. A lot of guys were saying.
And I mean, getting to know everybody in the whole Northeast that comes and actually putting faces to names and voices on the radio and all that's huge. And I think the hunting community is such a cool group of guys in the whole Northeast, because we all do the same thing. We're all out there for the same reason. Yep. And it was just like a huge family party almost,
Yeah.
So, but you did a great job with it, and I love the venue on that farm. It just works out perfect. You feel like you're just in a great setting.
Yeah. No, I appreciate it, and the farm is a big part of it. And the farm reached out to me as I was talking about the idea. They listened to the podcast just kind of naturally, and they reached out and said, "Hey, I heard you talking about this. Come check out our farm." And they really embraced it from the beginning. I think it's a big part of what makes that place feel so special.
Absolutely, yeah.
So as we're going to be doing it every year at Wildwood Farm in Westminster, Massachusetts. That will always be the same, but I'm thinking about doing one in the Finger Lakes region of New York next year as well. So if anybody's listening in the Finger Lakes region, that whole kind of greater region there, you've got a farm or a property that you think might be a good place to host a Huntstock, please reach out. You can email me at huntsuburbia@gmail.com. We'll have links in the description here too. And if you want to check out more about Huntstock, go to www.huntstockevents.com, and hopefully we'll see you guys there next year.
Yeah, if not, we'll see you on the track. I got a really good horse story I'll tell real quick. I was hunting in Idaho, and we had like 3 feet of snow. It snowed all night long, all the next day, and then into the next day. And we were up like 9,000 feet in this tent, and the tents were caving in. We were shoveling snow away from the tents all night, and there was no game whatsoever on the top of that mountain. And I told the guides, I said, we need to get out of here. I said, we need to move this tent and get down lower. I said, with there's no snow. I said, all the game is left this mountain.
Yeah.
And I tried to hunt that day. I was right to my waist. So one of the guides comes back and he says, it rained down by the river, and it was like 5 miles down to the river. And he says, there's hardly any snow down there. And I said, I'm headed to the river in the morning. So I get up 4 a.m. Make story short, I rode down to the river. I killed a 6x6 elk, and I had a mule deer tag, and I killed a beautiful 5x. Nice. Actually, he's in my Wyoming camp. It's a beautiful muley. And I killed them both right off of the horse.
No shit.
And this horse.
On horseback.
Yeah, this horse. I slid up. When I saw those 3 elk, I was riding back up that night. I shot the mule deer in the morning, riding back up, and I slid the rifle out of the scabbard. I laid the rifle across the saddle, not even thinking that horse might blow up. And I shot that 6x6, fired at him once. That horse never flinched.
Yeah, I was going to say, what did the horse do?
Yeah, never flinched. He was the best horse. So that night I'm riding back to camp, and I'm thinking, it snowed all day long, and as I'm getting up the mountain, the snow's getting deeper and deeper, and it was literally to the horse's chest. You couldn't even tell where the horse trail was whatsoever. And we're riding up the side of this mountain, and I'm looking at my GPS, and it's starting to get dark. And I'm looking at the track, because I had a track coming down that morning. And I'm thinking, man, because we had a steep section that was like a cliff. Dad actually went off over it with his horse and got hurt really bad on that trip, cut his head open. And I said, if this horse can't follow that trail, I said, I'm going to go back and make camp. There was a blowdown. I said, I can make a camp in that blowdown, build a fire, and survive the night right there, no problem. And so I had it in my head I was going to go back. I said, there's no way I'm going to make it. Well, that horse, I arrived at camp at 10:30 that night, like 5 hours after dark. And that horse never faltered off of that original track more than 3 feet.
Knew where he was going.
There was no sign of that trail.
Yeah.
And, that was, I don't know, 12, 14 years ago now. But, yeah, so a horse will take you where they've already been. They already know the trail. Yeah, it's amazing.
Sound like a great horse. Maybe somebody had shot off the back of him before because he didn't flinch.
Oh, I think so. Yeah. Red that I rent in Wyoming, I don't think I'd shoot off the back of him.
Yeah.
You might get a different response.
So 20 years hunting elk, 20 bulls. That's impressive. And we're gonna get into deer hunting, here in a little bit. But also, you love bobcats. How many bobcats you think you've
Couple
killed?
hundred.
Couple hundred bobcats.
Yeah. I bought me and my buddy Sandy Mojo. He's the best hound hunter I ever probably knew in my life. That was my age, and hunting companion. Just my best friend, best hunter I've ever met, and we met each other 20-something years ago and started bobcat hunting together, and we've just had so much fun running bobcats. And we usually kill between 10 and 15 every winter, and we only try to kill, mature cats like 30.
Do you have unlimited tags?
Yeah, you do. Unlimited tags here in Maine. So we try to only run, bigger cats like 30 to 40 pound range, and we've killed some big cats.
How big is this one here?
That cat right there was 42 pounds. Yeah. That was a good cat.
I've got a Maine coon.
That's about as big as a Maine bobcat gets right there. Actually, anywhere in the U.S., you don't see a bobcat any bigger than usually 40, 45 pounds.
What's your biggest one that you've
46.
Killed? 46?
Yeah. He's out in the other room there.
In the entryway?
Yeah. I got a 44 and a 46, but a trophy cat to any cat hunter is a 30-pound cat. That's always been rule of thumb. A trophy bobcat's 30 pounds. So
cool. They're beautiful animals. And you got lynx up in Maine, too. Is there any season on that?
No season on lynx yet. You can't run lynx. So there's more lynx, I think, now than there is bobcats. And I wish the state would put a season on them because we've got too many. They wiped the rabbit population down pretty low, and that's their main source of food.
Is there anywhere in the U.S. where there's a lynx season?
I don't think so. Alaska there is.
Yeah. Oh,
yeah. Yeah, my buddy Jim Guide that used to be my taxidermist that mounted probably half of these deer for me, he moved to Alaska, and I see him trapping lynx up there all the time. So he's having a ball.
How many, all right, a couple hundred bobcats, that's a lot. And then what about for mountain lions? How many mountain lions have you killed?
I've killed 3 mountain lions.
Yep.
Yeah, probably run 20.
Yep.
We let a lot of them go and stuff like that.
Again, just trying to get a mature one?
Yeah. So, sometimes you'll tree females a lot of time, and, they might, a couple times they had cubs with them, so we just don't shoot them and let them go. Try to look for a big tom.
Yep.
Yeah.
How big is that tom out there in the entryway?
That's a 180-pound tom. Yeah, that was my biggest one, so I had a full mountain on him.
That's a big
Yeah, he's a big cat. Huge cat.
Yeah.
About like shooting a deer,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Are there any 200-pounders?
Oh, there is, yeah.
Yeah.
The further, what I find, the further west and the further north you go, the bigger the cats get because there's bigger game, more game, so especially if they're feeding on elk. I think
that's another dog game? You're running dogs?
Yeah, running dogs, yeah. I love running hounds. Like I said, Dick Drysdale introduced me to hound hunting when I was 7 years old, and I hunted with him till I was probably 19, and I got married, and right after that, and we kind of drifted apart doing different things, but he was at Mom's thing. He's just like family to us all.
Yep.
Great people, him and his wife. Yep.
And then move into bears. So how many bears have you killed? We talked about you got 5 Maine book bears?
Yeah, I got at least 5 that made Maine antler and skull. My daughters both have Maine antler and skull bears. My wife's got 1 or 2 Maine antler and skull bears. And it was kind of a family thing that we all did together, running bears with hounds. And we did that for a lot of years. We hunted with my buddy Kirk Rogers and Jimmy Osgood, and they had phenomenal hounds. And we used to, run all. We'd go to the county. That's where we killed, some of these 500-pounders. I got 3 over 500 up in the county. My dad shot one that was over 6.
Jeez.
And, that was a monster. I mean, we had 5 guys holding the hide up, and the hide was higher than the heads. And he was so big we had to skin him in the woods and just take the hide and the meat out. But, had a lot of fun doing that. Yeah, I don't know. I think I probably killed 17, 18 bears myself over the years.
One grizzly?
One grizzly, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I killed him in Alaska. Yeah. Yeah, that
Big bear.
Yeah, that was a fun hunt. Spring grizzly hunt on snowmobiles. Yeah, and you go out on the frozen rivers.
Yep.
This is in April, like the very beginning of April, and
So there's still highways to the river.
yeah,
Still a
yeah,
highway
but
for you?
it started. You'd be surprised how fast things start rotting and going, because by the end of the week, it was a 10 or 12-day hunt with Chet, and was the guy I hunted with, and by the end of the week, the sun would get so hot during the day, be up in the 60s, and big chunks would fall right out of the river in the ice, and you'd be riding along, and there'd be a hole, and it's all river. You could see it started melting. So we ended up cutting trails into the woods to get around these little holes, you know, and it was going fast. But we were 300 miles back in. He dropped us off by bush plane, and he had ridden the snowmobiles in there ahead of time and dropped them off. And we stayed in this little, probably an 8 by 12 plywood shack that wasn't even, like an ice shack. This thing, bears, porcupines had chewed holes in the sides of it. Bears had the whole thing raked up where they were trying to get in it. And he had an outhouse out back, and there was probably 5 feet of snow, and we had stairs shoveled so you went down into the outhouse to go take a dump. But, yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, no running water, nothing. Running water was you cut a hole in the river, and we lugged it with a bucket.
Yeah.
But we ate good the whole week, and it was a blast. It was one of the funnest hunts I've been on. We'd get out there, and we'd wait till like 9 in the morning till the sun got above the mountains, because believe it or not, if you went when the shadows were there, a mile away you couldn't see a bear track on the mountain with the spotting scope. Wouldn't show up. It would just blend right in. As soon as that sun come up and hit those mountains, those bear tracks just like magnified, and you'd glass around and say, "Oh, there's a bear track,"
Wow.
So what they were doing is, what happens in Alaska is, as soon as those warm days come, it gets like 60 degrees every day in the spring, it starts melting and it starts dripping into their dens, and they go right up to the highest peaks they can find. They dig a hole in the shale, and they let the snow blow over them. They don't dig a cave in the ground at all. It's basically just a hole, and they lay in there, and the snow blows right over them all winter long. And they'll just roll around in there, and you can see that when they call it buffalo hair, because he wore all his long hair off.
Yeah.
So from rolling in the den all winter as they're sleeping and they just rolling around, they wear all that hair off their back, and it looks just like the back of a buffalo.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. So they call it buffalo hair. And so you ride out on these rivers, and you'd set up, and you'd glass like 4 or 5 miles of mountain ranges, but the two of us, and you'd look for a brown stain on the side of the mountain, because when that bear digs out, comes out of that den, he's digging out of it.
Yeah.
And he's cleaning the water out because he thinks he's going to go back in.
Yeah.
But they only really go back in for about a day or two, and then they're out. They stay out, because once they wake up.
Yeah.
So they'll go out the first day, and they'll usually make a walk around, and then they'll go back and lay in the den because they're pretty sleepy.
Yeah.
And so we're out there the first morning, and we're glassing, and he goes, I found a bear. I found a den. So I go look at the spot and scope. We're checking it out, and you could see where this bear went out. You could follow his tracks all the way around and back in. There's a picture if you wanted to grab it anyway of that bear right where I shot him. Yeah. So we looked at it, and you can see how deep the snow was. This was like April 5th or 6th. I killed him. He was 8'3". And so Chet says to me, he says, "We got to hike up there." And he says, "Well, hike up there." And he goes, "That's going to take us 2 or 3 hours." And he says, about 2 o'clock, he's going to come back out of his den again. And I looked at him and I said, "Why don't we just ride up there?" He said, "Oh, we can't ride up there." And I says, "I could probably ride up there with my eyes closed." I said, "I've been snowmobiling probably over 100,000 miles most of my life."
Yeah.
And I says, "All I do is mountain ride between Wyoming and Maine and everything. All we ever did was make border trails, and Dad and I made most of the trails in Maine that were ever up in Chapman."
Yeah.
And so I says, "If we ride around that backside, we could ride up and get within, 300 yards, shut the sleds off, hike up. So we ended up doing that.
You convinced him?
Yeah, I did. So we rode up and we hiked up over the backside and we laid on top of this little ledge, and just about 2 o'clock we laid there and talked for a while, and about 2 o'clock, sure enough, I see his head come up out of this hole. He come out and he looked around. You know, grizzly's got a head on him like that. He looked around. Pretty soon he come up out of the hole and he's milling around, walking around, and I looked at Chet and I says, is that a good one? He goes, oh yeah, that's a good bear. And I said, I think I've shot black bear that big. He looks at me. I don't think so. Because, you know, they wore all the hair off and they've used all their fat up. I've never shot a spring bear before. And he looked skinny.
Yeah.
He was long, he was big, had huge feet on him. And I was allowed 2 bears because I was in a predator zone. In some zones in Alaska, you're allowed 2. He says, I said, I'd like to kill a bigger one. He says, I'd kill that one, and then we'll go after a big one. I said, okay, that sounds good. So I ended up, as soon as I shot him right through the lungs, and that bear immediately just grabbed his side, started biting his side, and he said, shoot him again. And as he's rolling down the hill, I put 3 more in him, and then he just kind of went limp, and he slid almost to the bottom of the mountain, half a mile.
Yeah. Wow.
That's how steep it was.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we rode back down. That's where we dressed him out. So I actually shot that bear, you know, I don't know if you can see the roll marks.
Oh, no.
Yeah, but maybe. But yeah, he was just tumbling. And I shot him, you know, half a mile above that up in those higher peaks.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. That's a great story.
Yeah.
Yep.
I always wanted to go back, but I haven't made it yet.
Too much other stuff to hunt.
Too much going on.
Too many mule deer and whitetail to hunt, right?
Yeah, mule deer, whitetail, and elk.
Yep.
You got it, yeah.
All
Shot
right,
a lot of moose, too, in my life.
Oh, yeah, moose, yeah.
Yeah, I've killed 8 bulls in my life, and my daughter Sierra killed, she just built a new house. We took her moose out, but she shot that one in Norjawk, Maine.
Yep.
Made the main antler and skull. That was
That's a nice one.
Giant bull, yeah. My buddy Sandy and I found him, and we actually took Sierra out of school one day, and it was pouring rain. We went in there and set her up. There was an old chopping in there. And so it was all these old cuts, and that bull was living right there eating on those cuts. And I jumped him that day when we were deer hunting. So I knew he wasn't going to go far. So we went and got Sierra out of school.
She had a moose permit?
She had a moose permit,
She pulled it, yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know, she was probably, looking at the picture, she was like 14 or 15 there, I think, so about 15 years ago. And Sandy and I made a loop up around there, and that bull, he come running down one of those twitch roads, because there was like 5 twitch roads to that big log yard.
Yeah.
And I had her sitting on a log pile right in the back side of it. And he come down into that, and he just stopped when he got to that log pile and stood there, and she shot him 3 times and dropped him right in the middle of that chop in there. But
what a great bull. I mean, did it
made main antler and skull, and
yeah,
15 years old. Yeah, that was a good experience for her. Yeah, and she's killed that buck you see below there. Mm-hmm. She killed that the year before when she was 14 on Youth Day, weighed 203.
Geez, and what a beautiful rack. I love those.
Yeah, he was gnarly.
Yep.
Yeah, she's
Gnarly,
got that in
thick
her
rack.
house. And when she graduated from high school, she had more big bucks on the wall than the entire boys in the entire school. So she was quite a hunter when she was a kid.
That's great.
I took her to Anacostia, Iowa, Missouri, Delaware. I mean, I took that kid on probably 8 or 9 different trips all over the place hunting deer, and she shot some good ones.
Does she still hunt?
She hunts a little bit. She's got 2 kids, grandkids of ours, 1 and 3. So for the last 3 years, she's been pretty busy.
Oh, yeah.
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 Yeah, she killed an 8-pointer there like 3 or 4 years ago when she was pregnant with our granddaughter Charlie, and over on my gravel pit there, and that was a nice 8-pointer, probably weighed 180, 185. It was a nice buck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
But she'll be back into it as soon as those kids grow up a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's talk. Should we talk some whitetail hunting? What do you think?
I think we should. Yeah. We got a million stories of whitetails.
And we're just looking at a million of them here on the wall. And so let's just give people some stats on whitetails. I mean, you've killed how many over 170, you said?
I killed 7 over 170 that gross over 170 around the country. I never killed one in Maine over 170. 168, which is that buck right there. That
Tall
was my
guy in the middle.
Yeah, that's my biggest, highest scoring buck in Maine.
Yep.
Yeah. I killed a lot of 130s.
Beauty.
A few 140s in Maine. I think one over 150.
And what about weight-wise? How many 200-pounders?
Oh, I'm pretty sure I'm at 26, but I lost track there years ago.
Yeah.
I've killed well over 50 200-pounders in my life between Saskatchewan, Alberta, and Iowa, and Missouri, South Dakota. I've hunted I got a lot of places I hunt, and I've killed some giants over the years.
Well, a lot of people that will be, a lot of people watching this are from the Northeast, so they're familiar with that. But there will be some watching this that aren't familiar with, in the Northeast, it's a tradition. You weigh your animals. You want to see how much it weighs, and the 200-pound mark is the mark.
Yeah,
right.
200-pound buck in Maine is a trophy buck, and this pile of racks on the floor here that I never mounted. There's a few sheds in there, but there's probably 20 racks, and most of them are 200-pound bucks. But being Jackman, Maine, which is one of the hottest winters in the state up in that northwest corner, so our racks don't grow that big. So 130-inch whitetail in Jackman's really a big deer. That's a big one.
Yep.
120 is more average. So, and even looking at all Hal's videos over the years, a lot of the big bucks we kill, which are 5, 6, 7-year-old deer, they're huge-bodied deer, but they just don't have big horns.
Yeah.
So that is one thing you sacrifice for weight.
Yep.
Sometimes you sacrifice antlers.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, a lot of guys just don't care about antlers,
Yeah.
I like antlers a lot, but
yeah. I probably was in my 30s, early 30s, and I got tired of killing 120-inch big bucks.
Yeah.
Because they were all 8-pointers. They were always the same, and I was always after a bigger rack that I thought had a bigger rack, and I'd end up killing another 8-pointer. So, and I can remember one year with Dad, and we went in and I killed this buck, and I hadn't even found him yet. And I went back to the truck. He had pretty good blood trail. Went back to the truck and grabbed Dad. I killed him pretty quick on the track, and he was one of the few easy ones. And we get in there, and I go, another damn 8-pointer. I said, geez, and Dad's like, we got to start hunting somewhere else. And I'd been hunting Jackman my whole life, tracking bucks. I loved tracking bucks to this day up in those mountains, and it's hard work, very hard work. And I tell people, and Hal says the same thing, you either love it or you hate it, right?
Immediately, right?
Yeah, immediately. Immediately. I brought a dozen guys over the years up to Jackman that wanted to come kill a 200-pound buck, and the first day they went home, some of them I never even saw them again. They just went back to camp, packed their gear, and they were gone. They talked to them when I got home. What happened? Oh, I can't do that, man, and so, you got to be in pretty good physical shape, and when you earn one of those big bucks up north, they hold more value in your entire life than any buck with big racks I've ever shot out west.
Oh, yeah.
Because, sometimes I got a couple on the wall that I hunted 7 days straight to kill. This one right here, I think I hunted 26 days straight to kill him. I shot him on the last day of the season. And
you would leave at night, and in the morning you'd go right back to where you left him, or
what
happened with that deer?
You hear people say that. You never go back to where you left a deer because
now you're way behind him if you do
that.
Yeah,
he's not just going to lay down.
Yeah.
He's going to keep going because at nighttime, deer are nocturnal. They're going to lay down and sleep during the day. They're going to move at night. So just his time clock in his head, I don't care how tired he is.
Yeah.
He's not going to lay down all night and just go 100 yards from where you left him.
Right.
You're going to spend half or maybe the whole day and never catch him again if you do that. 9 times out of 10, every big buck I've ever killed up north, a buck has his range. They've all got, and there'll be like a mountain over here and a mountain over here, and you'll have a big buck crossing on a logging road in between. I'm going to pick his track up 9 times out of 10 usually within a couple 100 yards of where I found it the day before. Always. He's going to cut, because he's going to go right back and he's going to check this doe group over here, that doe group down there, and this doe group over here. They know where those pockets of does are, and that's all that's on his mind.
So it's not like when you left him, he's going up over a ridge, and now at night you're like, oh, I got to go to the other side and swing around the backside. No, you're just going back to that.
Right.
That main crossing.
Usually the first day on a big buck, you're learning his territory. You're learning his habitat where he lives. You're learning his routine, and even the second day. So usually it's the second day I kill a lot of big bucks after I've tracked them the first day. You've kind of wore them down. And another thing is, I say they kind of get used to you. They get tamer if you don't shoot at them, you know.
So if you jump them, then
you
know you're there.
Yeah, and so like the second or third time you jump them, lots of times, especially years ago before there was coyotes, they'll stand there and give you that shot opportunity sometimes. Most of the time now you're shooting them on either walking, catching them by surprise, or on the run. But, you're going to find him somewheres in that whole valley routine of where you were. If not, you go over to the next mountain, and tote roads usually run, in the valleys up north.
Yeah.
And then all the logging roads go uphill and the little short stub roads. So you're going to find his track.
So if you check that first one again and it didn't cross again fresh, you're going back to the truck and you're driving the backside of that mountain.
Yeah, I'm going to go to the other 3 or 4 places that I crossed. Or, I try to hunt in Maine. I hunt places that I've got like 5 different spots, but I've hunted them all my life. So I kind of know all the saddles and crosses where all these big bucks cross, and I can usually find a track every day I go up. I've very seldom ever had a day when I haven't been on a big buck track, just from experience. So
and you cover a lot of ground to get to the track quick. You cover it quickly.
I do.
How fast you moving in the? Well, first of all, before we go back to that, just want to go back to where you said he can get used to you a little bit, right?
Yeah.
So if you jump him up, and you jump him up a couple of times, as long as you haven't shot at him, then he can just kind of look at you like, oh, there's that thing again.
Some bucks get tamer.
Yeah.
As the day or the week goes on, they'll get tamer.
Yep.
And because they get kind of used to you tracking them, and you keep that distance, you're not a threat to them.
Yeah.
So persistence. You stay after them, you're going to kill them.
They're used to keeping a buffer because all they got to do is stay away from the coyote's
75.
mouth.
I usually say about 75 yards. You can get 75 yards from a big buck,
yeah.
Which in the woods that's quite a ways away.
Yeah.
With brush and furs and everything between you and them, they feel pretty safe at getting away fast.
Yeah.
So, in practicing your shooting ability, I tell people practice, in my pit, and we roll tires down over. That works pretty good. I usually get my buddy with me or something. We'll just take turns doing a little bit of that now and then. Any type of shooting, I don't care if it's a .22 rifle or your actual deer rifle, it's all going to sharpen your eye up. It's muscle memory.
Yeah.
Right. Hey, folks, Rick here. So this is our, from Big Woods Bucks, newest packs this year, the 100% wool. Great little packs for tracking, designed by hunters for hunters. And I actually designed this one. This was my idea with the shoulder straps on it. It's a little bit bigger, hold a lot more gear. This is like an all-day pack. I love this pack. I'm going to try it out. And our jackets, 100% wool, all designed by us. Got a snap-on wool vest, so you can actually take this off and use it year-round. As just a green jacket. We got them in plaid too. Great hunting jacket for the whole Northeast. You can go to bigwoodsbucks.com, look them up, and it's a great product.
That's a huge difference between bow hunting and gun hunting or just tracking. But having a gun in your hand is that buffer. They can feel safe 7,500 yards away from you.
Yeah.
But you couldn't shoot that with a bow.
Yeah.
But when you got a gun. I've even rattled deer in sometimes, and they're kind of walking away from you as a bow hunter, and you try to rattle them and see if you can get them to come in. You can get them to come in, but they still keep that buffer.
Oh, yeah.
75 yards away from where they heard the rattling happen.
Right.
And if you had a gun, you could.
I've had a couple come right in under the tree, but most of the time you're right.
Yeah,
most of the time you're right, though. They kind of keep that buffer, and they want to skirt around it. Yeah.
All right, so let's go back to the track, right? So you go to the backside, and you got to know this deer the first day, second
Yeah,
day.
this big one.
Yep.
Yeah, I saw him the first day I tracked him, so I knew he had a huge rack. He was probably one of the biggest racks I've ever seen in Maine in my life, and so I was pretty determined to kill him. So, and luckily that year we only had like maybe 4 days the whole year with no snow. The snow actually melted in between, so I actually tried to track him and find him on bare ground, and I did find him one day, but never caught up with him. Then we ended up getting snow again, like almost the third week. So the third week and the fourth week, I was on him every single day. I was glad when Sundays came because I needed it to rest. So, yeah. But how I killed him is, and I've been doing this for years. I kind of learned it on my own, is leaving the track, kind of second guess where he's going to go next. And it's hard to educate somebody about that or train them when to leave the track because it's instinctive. It's just you get into the certain situation or a certain little ridge, or there might be a pocket, or you might think, oh, there's a tote road. So you kind of need to hunt where you know the terrain.
You got to know it all.
Yeah, and maybe it's where I've tracked bucks over the years many, many times. I mean, some places hundreds have crossed that I've tracked the same spot, and I'll just run ahead. I'll leave the track and run ahead. So trying to explain to somebody when to leave, it's an instinctive thing. It's just all of a sudden you go, he's going to do this.
Yeah.
And I'm not always right.
Yeah.
Trust me. I mean, I'm wrong more than I'm right, way, way more. But when it all comes together, you only got to be right once all season.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Then you hit a home run.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah, 100%.
And that's not something that you can really pick up, in the new age technology like on OnX. That's something where you got to know the ridges.
I tell you about OnX though, bringing OnX up. OnX is a game changer for me out west.
Yep.
Because I can go to a place that I've never hunted before, like South Dakota or even some places in Wyoming hunting muleys, and I can go on OnX and I can scan all that ahead of time, and I can actually pick out and get to know the terrain in my head.
Yeah.
Before I even go there.
Mm-hmm.
So if you do that for days and days, it's almost like you've been there hunting it. So you get into that valley and you go, oh yeah, there's a big cliff over here and the river's right over around this corner, and this draw runs down like that. So it's already in your brain instead of you. Years ago we'd go and you'd pull out a topo map and you'd kind of say, okay, I think I've gone in about a mile. Yeah, there's that mountain,
Yep.
But OnX is a game changer for anybody that still hunts. And like I said, so trying to get in and pick out those locations where you think deer are going to be or elk are going to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there's tremendous benefit for OnX, and I use it
and
every
it
single
shows
day.
you it shows you where you are on that moment on the map.
Yep.
So your next move, another thing about OnX is no matter where I hunt out west, I'll plan my entire day out in the morning on OnX how I'm going to hunt.
Yeah.
So if I got 10 hours of daylight, I'll map out 10 hours of walking, because that's the way I hunt. I still hunt with binoculars and my gun. And I'll map out what's a 10-hour day and get back.
That's a cool way to use it.
Yep.
Yeah, I haven't heard people even talking about using it that way. There's always a new way to use OnX.
Oh, absolutely. So rather than just going blind like we used to years ago and say, I found this lake up here, I already know where I'm headed.
But if you were going into a spot the first time using OnX, and I'm just saying you wouldn't be able to, you can't replace that knowledge that you have of hunting the same spot for 30, 40 years and be able to get off and go, I know he's going to cross exactly here. You wouldn't be able to have that from OnX, is all I'm saying. That old school know-how and the having that map built into your head from years of hunting it is more valuable in that situation. Yeah. But OnX is tremendously beneficial.
Tremendous. I'm a 110% OnX fan. I use it everywhere I go.
And you guys have Big Woods Bucks has a promo code BWB.
We do.
If you want to check out OnX, you haven't used it before.
Go on our site and look at OnX and type in BWB and you get a little savings there. And if you don't have it, once you have it, you'll wonder how you hunted without it.
Oh yeah,
you really will.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think I've got a promo code too.
Think about like you're
HS20,
gonna hunt this afternoon.
Yeah.
And it shows all the property lines.
Yeah.
So there's no guessing, game being on private ground that you're not supposed to be on, because it shows where you are, and it shows, okay, I got permission on this guy and his boundaries.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I wouldn't, unless there were posted signs, I wouldn't really be able to tell.
Yeah.
If you were like, hey, go over here and check and hunt this spot.
We're lucky in Maine because you have to post your land to not be able to hunt it.
Yeah.
And so if it's not posted, you can go. I mean, we encourage everybody to ask permission. It's the right thing to do, but so it's okay that way unless you run into a posted sign. But Onyx is just a great tool, absolutely. Yeah. So here's the story without Onyx. Years ago, I was tracking this buck up by Indian Pond, up on the side of Harris Dam, and a guy told me about him. Guy I know named Hank told me about this big buck, and he ended up weighing 236. And trying to find him here, but anyway, he's over there.
Which giant buck is?
Yeah, no, and so anyway, I found his track. I went in there and found his track, and that morning, and got on him, and I tracked him all day long, and just had a huge foot. You could tell he was a toe dragger. Just his stance was real wide. Just had a huge body on him, sinking 3-4 inches deep every step.
Yep.
So we went back up the next day. This was the last week of rifle season. Hunted him, and I ended up jumping him in a chopping, and it was all these poplar whips that had come up. It was like a 2-year-old cut. They were about 4 feet tall, and I could just see him running away from me about 100 yards. So I pulled up and I fired at him in those whips, and I think my bullet must have hit one of those whips, because when I finally killed him, my bullet, and I used to use those Winchester Super X, and they were black. They called them black talons or whatever, and they had a little red, piece on the end of them. And so I fired at him, and I never found any blood. We had about 4 inches of snow, and he went down and he crossed the Kennebec River on me. So I knew where he crossed the river that day. So I tracked him down. I give up. We went back, tried to find another buck. We went back the next day. Sure enough, he was back there, and I found him again. He went in the same bog, bedded down. So that whole entire last week of rifle season, I tracked him. Never got another shot at him again. And keep in mind, he had this bullet laying against his spine the whole time. And 4 or 5 times I'd place Dad on the river, and that buck would walk, literally walk right around Dad. And I'd walk up, and I'd see him. I'd say, hey, he crossed right here. Move over here, And we didn't have any radios or nothing back then.
Was he swimming across, or was he in a shallower spot?
No, shallow spot where he'd go right across. But it was enough current, I couldn't cross it. It would have swept me down, but that buck could go across. He's on 4 legs, I'm on 2. So, long story short, I hunted him. Get to the last day of muzzleloader season, and that week, and I jumped him, and I was near the river, and I knew he was headed to the river running, and I knew exactly where he was going to cross.
Yeah.
I left his track, and I just kind of made a little bit of an arc so I didn't bump him. And I run for all I was worth. Back when I was younger, man, I used to walk 20 to 24 miles a day on a deer track. And about half that now.
Marathon.
Yeah, oh, yeah. I used to catch a lot of them, run them down. And I got to the river, and I no more than waited like 20 seconds. And he popped out, and he just started walking. He stepped down into the water, and he just looked like that. And boom, I shot him. So
knew exactly where he was.
I knew where he was going to go, So, people try to track. You just can't give up. Never give up. Lanny Benoit years ago, when I first met Lanny, I used to run into him on logging roads. He always had a funny story every time you met him. He's just greatest deer hunter I ever knew when I was a kid. And he always told me he goes, never give up. That was his words of faith right there. Never give up. And that always stuck in my head. And daylight till dark.
Yeah.
I didn't care what time I came out. And I killed quite a few of those bucks the last 15 minutes of daylight.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and then a lot of people would be, oh, man, I'm so far back in. But like Joe Donito said in the podcast I just did with him, what would you rather be doing?
Yeah. Walking out
and
going home, sitting down, eating supper, watching TV, be on his track.
Yeah.
That one I killed last year, I killed him 15 minutes before dark.
Yeah, that's just a gorgeous buck.
Slewfoot, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd seen him 3 times that day. I knew if I stayed on him, I was going to get him. Yeah.
He's probably in the 130s, isn't he?
Yeah,
For a main
he
deer?
grossed like 144.
Oh,
and
140s, yeah.
Yeah,
Nice.
gross, yeah. Yeah, I think he netted 136 or something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
A great main buck.
yeah, yeah. So, yeah, and another good buck story I got is, that's that picture right up on the wall behind you there. You grab that if you want to.
Oh, yeah.
But it was snowing hard one day, and of course when it snows hard, them big bucks just lay right down, and they usually don't move till the storm's over.
Yep.
And I had been all around the whole mountain range at my camp, couldn't pick up a good deer track anywhere, and this was muzzleloader season, and I couldn't pick a good deer track up anywhere, and so I ended up, my father and brother were hunting with me, and I ended up jumping in the truck, and I didn't even tell those guys, and I went over to another spot, and into another spot that's got a huge swamp. It's probably like 6 miles long by 3 miles wide. Yeah. And I drove in there, and you could see this old buck track in the road. It was snowed in, and you really couldn't even tell which way he was going. It was snowed in so hard, but you could see the stance on him, and he was just an old toe dragger. He's dragging his feet really hard. So I said, damn, that's a good buck. I'm going to get on him. And it was probably 2 o'clock in the afternoon then. Only had like 2.5 hours of daylight left. So I knew I had to push pretty hard to catch up with him. So he went down and he crossed this. He went into that big swamp, and there was a stream went through the middle of it. Stream was right up to my knees. I crossed the stream, got over on the other side, and I come to a bed where he'd gotten up. Well, then I could see it got fresher, so I knew I was going the right way, but it still had a lot of snow in it. Mm-hmm. I went about 100 feet, another bed, got fresher. Went about another 100 feet, and by then I'm slowing down. I'm like, man, he could be right in front of me now.
You said this is late season, right?
Yeah, muzzleloader.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I got onto him, and pretty soon his track got pretty fresh, and I was right behind him then. So, and he turned, and he's headed right back towards my pickup. So I'm thinking, damn, I should have told my father and brother where I was going, because they'd kill him right now.
Yeah.
And I knew he was going to go right on his backtrack. A lot of them big ones, they'll go and make a loop looking for a doe or something. Then they'll go right out their backtrack and go back over where they were. So sure enough, I come out, and there's my pickup parked right there, and he walked right by it. And I no more than come across that old logging road. I come across the log, and it was kind of cut in there, and there was another little swale on the other side of it, like a peat moss bog. And I just come over the rise, and he was making a scrape under a tree right there, under a beech tree, and he was racking his horns in the limb. Well, I swung up with the muzzleloader, and he bolted at the same time, and I didn't get a shot at him. So I watched him for a second run off, and I could just see glimpses of him, and I ran. He kind of went to my right, and I ran at a 45-degree angle because I figured he was going to cut and loop down, and I've hunted that piece of woods a lot, and I know what them bucks do.
So there's another example. Yeah.
Yeah, so I ran at a 45. Well, there was an old cut in there, and when he ran, he hit that tote road, thinking he turned left and get away from me. Well, I ran at a 45-degree angle, and I actually ran right into him. When I come into that opening, he's coming at me, and he stops. And he seriously, he looked behind him like, where do I go? There's a guy behind me.
Yeah.
And I just ran into this guy, and he did like a double take, and I shot him right in the neck, killed him. But yeah.
Rick Labbe in 2 places at once.
Yeah.
Behind the big buck and
Yeah,
right in front
you got to
of him.
fool them once in a while, and I tell you, it works, but it don't always work. It's just, thousands of tracks over the years, and I got probably a dozen of those that I cut off, left the
Planned
track.
on where he was going to be
Yeah.
going, and it worked out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's probably about a dozen that I left the track and killed, but they were all big deer, all smart deer that you probably wouldn't have killed staying on their track.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like you said again, though, that's instinctual, and you have to have some
It's all-
knowledge
yeah.
and history in the area.
Yeah, it's just split second. It's not something you can read about. It's not something you can sit there and think about, because if you sit there and think about it, you're losing time that he's walking.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, so it was that buck right there, that one that crossed the river.
Yep.
Yeah, that I killed. Yeah. Then
That one's got a crazy. angle on his rack there.
Yeah, he's like 24 inches wide.
Yeah.
Yeah, he made main on skull, and I actually shot him. I walked in on his track that morning, and I didn't even go very far from the truck. That was one of them easy ones, 1 in 100, and I didn't go very far from the truck, and he had gone into this bog, and it was all hackmatax in there, and all the spills, the yellow spills from the hackmatax, and there was one big blowdown. And I'm walking on his track, kind of creeping in, because he was walking really slow, and I knew he wouldn't be far. And I looked at that blowdown, and I said, man, that'd be a good spot for him to lay. I was looking around, and that was the only blowdown there. I picked up my scope, and I looked, and just as I picked up my scope, he stood up. I could see his silhouette behind it.
Yeah.
And I just picked his shoulder out and shot him, flattened him right there. Yeah, he was 218. That was a nice deer. Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about kind of just basic strategy, your style of hunting though, right? So in the morning when you get up, what are you doing to find a track first? Are you riding roads, or are you going to a spot crossing? What's Rick Labbe doing?
Depends on where I'm headed. So as I got older, this is what I do nowadays. I used to have my camp up in Chapman that I hunted out of my camp, and I'd go up there and stay, and I just get up and go find a track within 30 minutes every morning.
Yep.
So nowadays, what I do is I get up, and they have those, cams at the gas stations and Bishop's store, and, and there's like 3 of them. Over in Rangeley, there's one. And the first thing I do about 3:30 in the morning, I get up, and I look at those cams, and I see where there's snow. Because it don't always snow the whole state. You might get 2 inches over in Rangeley, and you don't get nothing in Chapman.
Is that why they got those cams going?
I think, so you can see what's going on. Yeah, because everybody can log on to them.
Yeah.
And so I'll go on and I'll look at those cameras, and usually in those gas stations in town, because the mountains are always higher, if you got an inch of snow with just a dusting on that camera, there's tracking snow out of town.
Even a couple flakes dropping, if you see that.
Yeah. If it's snowing, you know as soon as you get up 200 or 300 feet in elevation, you got an inch or 2 inches. Mm-hmm. So, and I'll usually leave here now. Sometimes I hunt out of my camp up to Moosehead, but not always. But I'll leave here, and I'll either head to Coben Gore or Eustis or Rangeley or Chapman, one of them. And it takes me an hour to drive, hour and 10 minutes from here to get where I usually hunt. And I'll get up there an hour before daylight by then.
And that's a short drive. That's a gas station drive in Wyoming, right?
That's a gas station drive in Wyoming.
Quick drive.
Go get groceries.
Yeah.
Right? So short drive. So I'll jump in my Toyota and head up there. And I usually already have 4 or 5 places in mind as I'm driving up that I'm going to check on the way up. And as I start finding snow, I'll start checking different roads and whatnot. And so I try to first look for a buck on a road, crossing a road, because usually by the second week of the season, they're moving. There's deer tracks everywhere. They're moving. They're searching for does. Second, third week are the 2 best weeks. Fourth week, everything starts to slow down quite a bit. So once I find their track, and if I get on him and he's a deer I want to kill, I'm going to go back tomorrow and the day after till I kill him. So,
which that's kind of a rare thing, I think, from what I've heard about a lot of trackers is, I'll just go find another track.
Yeah,
going
sometimes.
Back on the same one.
Yeah, I do. I go usually the second or third day. I almost always get a shot at the buck I'm after. Sometimes if I see him that first day, and he doesn't have much for horns, and I usually look when I'm tracking that buck. Little telltale signs I'm going to look at is, when he goes through an opening. I've got on great big buck tracks before, and they'll go through like a 14-inch opening between 2 spruce trees following a doe. And if he don't go out around that, I don't want to kill him. He might be a heavy deer, but he's got no horns on his head.
Yeah.
Or sometimes a big buck will go under a pine limb or something like that. And if he didn't knock the snow off it, he's got almost no tine length. He's probably got heavy beams, but no tine length at all.
Yeah.
So I'll just say, I don't want to kill that deer. We'll go look for another one. And so, I try to read the track always. There's so much in that track to read. I mean, I could write an entire book on it and probably not cover it all about just what the signs are reading that track. You can almost tell what kind of deer you're following. There's just so much detail.
What's the perfect track for you? What's it look like?
Oh, about 4 inches across by 5 inches long with his dew claws out and about 16 inches wide, walking slow, dragging his feet because I know he's tired.
Yeah.
Yeah. When they're dragging their feet, I told David Willett that years ago, and he asked me the same thing. He said, what do you look for? And I said, deer dragging his feet. And I said, usually later in the season, I said, he's worn out and he's tired. He ain't going very far. I says, I'm going to catch him.
Now, isn't there you can get mistaken over a foot drag or just it's high enough snow. There's going to be a little bit of a, they're not always coming out and going right in, right? So
yeah, especially
how do you
if
tell
you
the
get,
difference?
Yeah, if you get, 6 inches of snow or more,
Everyone's going to look like they're
a lot of them are going to drag. But I'll tell you, so the older bucks, they got a really, heavy round foot on them. So when they leave a drag mark, that drag mark's about the width of their hoof.
Yeah.
A young deer, when he's picking his foot out, he's just going to drag, and he's got a sharp pointed foot.
Yeah.
So he's just going to leave a little line. You can almost
dainty little line.
Yeah, you can see that. And like a 180-pound deer, even sometimes a 200-pound deer. And lots of times those deer got the best racks in the woods, especially up here in Maine. And whereas out west, the older a deer gets, the bigger his horns get. They got better minerals out west and whatnot. And the older structured deer just have big horns. They get non-typical and all that. But yeah, I kind of look, there's so many signs. And just the width of the track, the way he's walking, the length of his stride tells me a lot how far he's going. If he's
his pace, kind of.
Yeah. I mean, if his stride's only, like 24 inches or less, he's just poking along. Sometimes I might just check a buck's track and get on, and if he's feeding a little bit, you can tell he might cross a tote road and drop right into a bog or something, and he's feeding or walked up, fed on some old man's beard or something. I'm like, whoa, we better get on him.
Yeah.
He's not going a long ways.
So the stride length doesn't always tell you how long the deer is or how big he is. It more so can tell you his pace and how he's walking.
It's more by the timing of the season. Because when that big buck, like that one there, he was 242. At the beginning of the season, he's right full of piss and vinegar.
Yeah.
And he's chasing everybody off, and he's chasing those does.
Long strides.
Yeah, but he's going to wear down quick because he's old, So he's going to wear down quick, whereas a younger buck, a 3.5, 4.5-year-old deer, they're not going to wear down till almost the last week of the season. They're just chasing 24/7, day and night.
Yeah.
And they almost hardly lay down. That's why they lose so much weight. They don't eat.
Yeah.
Just
and then they get to a doe, and you've got a more mature, dominant buck on her, so they kind of wasted all that time.
Yeah.
He's already got her taken care of.
He kicks them off, and right.
So they've got it. Double is bad.
Yeah, absolutely. So like I said, there's so much to read into a track, and so much to look for. It's just like, why would you give up tracking versus sitting in a stand when you can be out there and it's just like an encyclopedia to me. I'm learning still at 59 years old. I'm learning every buck I get on. I'm learning something new about that buck, or I might have learned something new that I really had seen all my life, but I didn't actually pick it up. It didn't click. So I find that the older I get, the more I pay attention, and the more deer I kill in shorter distances. So back when I was young,
instead of jumping,
I was like a young buck. I'd run 20 miles a day trying to chase them down, and now I go, maybe 8 to 12 miles a day. 12 would be a long day for me. I killed that one. He was 13 miles last year. I was pretty tired at the end of that day, but still pretty good for 59.
So
I guess.
Now is it a lot of the time? That's great. a lot of the time now, are you getting more deer before you jump them, or on the first jump, and then back when you were younger, you were jumping them quite a few times?
Back when I was younger, I was jumping them all the time. But back when I was younger, we didn't have coyotes, and a lot of those bucks would jump up and they just runaways and stand broadside and look back at you because they had no predators.
Yeah, they weren't used to.
Yeah, they were only hunted theoretically 30 days a year because we had no predators. Bobcats were the only predator.
Not even bear?
We didn't have, believe it or not, Maine didn't have a great bear population when I was younger. I mean, I don't think bears were much of a problem. Just on spring fawns. But as far as mature deer, I don't think bear really are a problem.
Yep.
They killed a lot of the fawns in the spring. Yeah, when they're coming out of their dens and stuff. But no, coyotes were really the downfall of the Maine deer herd. Our deer herd's really good right now. The deer herd this year is the best I've seen it in 25 years, since the 90s.
Just from driving around, seeing them in fields, or how do you know?
Everywhere up north.
Yep.
I see deer everywhere up north. I get out, just either walking into a pond, fishing, streams. I'm seeing buck tracks everywhere. Last year, the 2 days I tracked him, I saw more 180-pound buck tracks than I've ever seen in my life. That, you'd look at him and say, wow, he's going to be a good one next year, but he's nothing I want to kill this year. But so there's going to be, and some of those deer will jump ahead 20 pounds. They'll go to be 200. Some of those same bucks will go to 210, 220.
Yeah.
Just because of the area they're in or the genetics, they just feed more, just like people. Deer are like people. They're all different. There ain't two the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you know when you got to slow down? What's your telltale sign on a buck that you're tracking? One of those really good ones,
Well, the first really good one is when you get in the kitchen and you notice he just took a bite or something, and then you start paying attention and you say, oh, he took another bite and another bite. He's going to lay down, because the only thing a deer wants to do, a big buck, is when they lay down, they want to chew their cud. So they're going to feed just for a minute or two. Not a lot. It's not like they got a plate of food in front of them.
Yeah.
But probably the best telltale sign, and this is like, gets my blood pumping, is I'll be up on a mountaintop or something, and I'll be on a buck track, and all of a sudden he'll walk up to a big spruce blowdown, and it was covered in old man's beard, and he's just fed everything around it.
Yeah.
He's going to be within 200 feet of that blowdown, almost always laying down. That's when, if you haven't already blown it and jumped him, I get my binoculars out, and it's just one step. And sometimes it'll take me an hour right then to go 200 feet, because I almost always know he's fed that much, he's going to lay down. So, and that's where those binoculars, where the human eye can't pick up, the same thing as a pair of 8-power binoculars. Not even close.
So you always carry a pair of binoculars
always,
tracking.
Yeah. I've left this house before in the morning, heading up north tracking, and actually got a half hour away and turned around, came back because I left my binoculars. Because I feel naked without them.
Yep.
My binoculars and my grunt.
Are you just tucking it inside your jacket, or are you wearing a chest?
No, I wear my binoculars right inside my wool coat, and I wear my grunt right in underneath them, right there, always zipped up and enclosed, so no spills can get in them. Sometimes I'll pull my binoculars out, especially if I've been pushing hard and they're all fogged up because of sweat.
Yeah.
But usually a quick rub, they work.
So getting to a blowdown and you see a buck fed on that old man's beard, and most people watching this are going to know, but deer can't digest their food just walking, so they have to chew their cud.
They got to chew their cud, so they have to lay down to chew their cud. They usually never chew their cud standing up. And so he's going to lay down. And here's another thing. If he's laying down chewing his cud and he hasn't been there very long, he's going to want to lay back down. So when you jump him, just sitting there waiting, letting him go do his thing, because he doesn't know you've been on his track. He might think you just kind of by chance came onto him.
And maybe he didn't even see you. Maybe he just heard you
and
he was gone.
Right. If he didn't make eye contact, he just heard you, he just caught a movement, he's going to run. He's going to run a ways. He's going to stop there and stand. And I've found over the years that the average buck will stand there about 20 minutes in one spot and just peer back at that back track. And the minute they see a movement, just either your pant leg or a boot, whatever opening they got, they're going to run again. Most of them don't stay there and wait for you to show. They're gone. So if you just let him go back to, 20 minutes to stand there, then about 10 minutes to actually meander off, and he's going to lay back down where he feels comfortable. He's going to lay down. He's going to watch that backtrack again every time. They always watch their backtrack. So he's going to lay back down. Could be in a in a high spot. It could be in a wicked thick spot. You just never know. They're all different. So you want to be paying attention. And like I said, very slow movements, one at a time. And I mean, I've tracked big bucks and jumped them, and they've only gone 100 feet and laid back down again. And then I've jumped them right back up, blown them out of their bed, thinking he won't lay down that quick. And they did. So you kind of got to pace yourself with the track.
So if he's always watching his back track, right, do you sometimes go off the back and try to come up, sneak in from behind? Like when is that an instinctual thing again, or you have to kind of know
sometimes
where you're at?
Yeah. Once you've jumped them within that first hour, they're watching their back track pretty hard. So, but once they're done chewing their cud, sometimes a buck will get up. Once he's done chewing his cud, he'll get up and he'll just start doing his thing again, start meandering. So that's probably one of my favorite bucks to kill is when I come to his bed and he's gotten up and I can see he's feeding again. He's just kind of doing his thing, meandering off. Probably like 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, that's when they usually get up. And you got maybe an hour or two left. I've killed a lot of bucks doing that, and you kind of just, all of a sudden you'll see a movement. And there he is. He's just kind of walking along, feeding, and they haven't even seen you yet. Then you got him.
Now, do you sometimes at that point use your grunt tube? When are you pulling the grunt out?
No, if I got a shot at that deer, I'm not going to use my grunt. I'm just going to get my bead on him and wait till I got a good shot at him. If I jump a buck and he hasn't made eye contact with me, like if I come up to a buck and he sees me, I'm not going to use my grunt for quite a while because I'll blow the whole hunt that day.
He'll associate that with a human now.
He'll know again. If I grunt anytime during that day, he's going to associate it with me. So I'm going to let him run off, and I'm not going to grunt till maybe an hour or two later. And if I get in the right situation, I might grunt to him again. But if I jump a buck a lot of time and I just see a flash or something go and I'm pretty confident he didn't see me, I'll grunt 2 or 3 times, just short grunts. And if I don't like the spot I'm in, I might just move real quick left to right. I'll look. And I always like to have a good-sized tree to either lean against or put against my back because it kind of breaks up your silhouette.
Yep.
Because they can pick that silhouette out. So I'll grunt and just move to a spot where I think I got better shooting, because sometimes they'll walk right back up their back track. Lots of times they go, if the wind's blowing, left or right or towards them, they're going to come back in, try to wind you. So I'll grunt, wait 20 minutes, about 20 minutes. If he don't show up, I'm going to start easing down his track. Lots of times you'll start easing down a buck's track and he'll be right there. He's
looking
actually coming back. Yeah. So many different situations, just hundreds of different situations on a buck I could explain. But like I said, a lot of it's instinctive. I try to help guys as much as I can on tracking and get them started. But really learning the details, you got to go do it. You got to get out there. You got to do it. You got to make mistakes. Because if you're making mistakes, you're going to learn from those mistakes quicker than you'll learn from anything else, because you won't do it again.
What do you think is the number one mistake that a new tracker will get into that you can help them out by telling them, hey, here's one thing that'll get you more bucks if you don't do it?
Yep. Well, the first number one mistake I think a lot of trackers make is they don't know how to age a track. Because if you're going to get on a track that was made 24 hours ago, chances are you're never going to catch that deer all day long. You're just going to follow him. And the other, I think, number one mistake is going too fast on a track. And I try to tell guys this. I say, kind of watch what he's doing. If he's walking slow, I'm walking slow. If that deer's got a 4 or 5 foot stride, you want to pick the pace up. I usually average like 2 miles an hour when I'm on a track when I'm really trying to catch up with a buck. Sometimes I'll be 4 hours, which is equivalent to 8 miles, 2 miles an hour. Sometimes I'll be 8 miles before I actually catch that buck and get up with him, because depending on what week of the season is, like I talked about before, that's their attitude, their mood. So it changes every day. A buck changes every day. The same buck you couldn't catch a week ago, you get on his track next week after he's run does all over the country and probably put 100, 125 miles on. He ain't going very far. He's tired. He's going to lay down. Yeah.
What are some things you can tell a new tracker when you get into that? You know, when he's fed on the old man's beard, you know he's going to be laying down. He's within 200 feet there somewhere, and you have to go one step in. What are some little things that you can tell him to make that quiet? Because you want to be silent at that point. And, you know, you got to turn your feet silent. Just give some pointers on being quiet.
I've hunted with a lot of guys over the years, and I taught my daughters both to hunt this way. And I always, when I'm really sneaking up on a deer, the first thing I slide in is my toes. A lot of guys put their heel down, and then it's crunch. Or if you can't, when you put your heel down, you can't feel a stick or a limb. So you've already committed to go forward. You're gonna break it. Mm-hmm. And so I always slide I slide my toes in, and then you can feel everything going into that track. So I kind of feel
first.
And I'm never looking at the ground.
Yeah.
You know, it's like a basketball player. You can see the ball down here, but you're watching everybody in front.
I used to always do that as a basketball player. My biggest thing was while I was dribbling, I was looking at the ball. My coach was always like, "You got to keep your eyes
They were stealing it away, just like a buck.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I think sliding your foot in really helps me a lot on tracking and sneaking. I got good at it when I was a kid, and I could sneak up on bucks. I mean, I've had bucks so close that I could have grabbed them by the antlers, and I actually missed them with my gun. They were so close because I wasn't aiming. I was just pointing and shooting. Yeah, I'll tell that story in a minute. But I think, and just going slow, just slowing all your movements down, everything. There's nothing fast. Just you look slow. You use your eyes, not your whole head. Yeah. And scan that track as far ahead as you can see it. You know, scan that track all the way as far as you can see it till it runs out. Use your binoculars. If you can't pick him up, usually you'll see an ear or something first. And if you can't pick him up, take 1 or 2 steps, because about every 2 steps, the whole scenery changes. Yeah. Because you've just moved to another window in the woods. Yeah. So every couple steps, some guys, they'll go like 20, 30 feet. That's too far. So, you were standing here, and you've got all these trees on this hardwood ridge. Well, that buck's laying behind that one. As soon as I move 1 step, I can see him. Where back here I couldn't. So it's real important when you close that distance, just slow right down. You'll kill way more deer. Yeah. Yeah, you'll see more deer and more opportunity, everything.
It's hard to stay in that mindset for as long as you need to, but because you find yourself going way too. Maybe you're in that zone for 20 minutes.
When I was young, I couldn't slow down. Yeah. I was just so driven to catch that buck all day long, and I couldn't make myself slow down. Well, after I got in my 40s, I started killing way more deer because I started slowing down, and because I jumped hundreds that I just went too fast. And I mean, I killed a lot of bucks. I probably killed more bucks than anybody I knew, but I screwed up. I dump truck loads of bucks, I say. Yeah, I say, you couldn't fill a dump truck with the bucks I missed over the years, and that's the truth. But
I think people
can learn.
It's so hard to, you talk about it, staying that slow, staying in the zone. It's hard for someone who hasn't really done it to imagine. And there's some mental fortitude that it takes to stay in that. It might take you, like you said, an hour, 2 hours to get where you need to go in that short distance, and most people can't. They're just naturally going to speed up, and then that's when you're going to break a twig, or you're going to blow it that way.
Oh, absolutely.
But when you get in it, and I've only done it, I've not nearly as much experience as you, but it feels awesome when you can stay in it. You are 100% in tune.
I got a buck on the wall right there that I shot in Iowa back, I don't know, can't remember what year it was, 2000.
The middle one there on the bottom?
Yeah, the middle one. Yep. So he gross scores 193. He's got 23 points. And I went out second shotgun season, okay? So I'm there with a 20-gauge shotgun. So by second shotgun season in Iowa, you've had 2 months of bow hunters after him, and you've had one whole week of shotgun season already before I got there. I always like that late season. And so the guy I was hunting with, he showed me some pictures of that buck, and they had one daytime photo, and the rest are all nocturnal. And I looked at that block of woods, and I said, he's bedding right here. I knew where he was bedding. It was just thick, thick cedar grove. There's no way, and it's all leaves in Iowa. It's all these oaks and hardwoods trying to get in there. He's going to just blow right out of there if you get close to him. And then he'll cross the road and he'll be on some neighbor's property, and you won't see him for a day. So I kind of mapped it out, what I was going to do, and I didn't have Onyx back then when I shot this deer. All I had was basically Google Earth that I used to use just like Onyx. So I kind of mapped it out, how at that time of the year, the wind was kind of coming out of the northwest. So I said, drop me off down at this end, and I'm going to hunt that ridge all the way in that hardwood ridge and try to sneak into that spot. So I spent 3 hours going about 300 yards up over this ridge, one step at a time. And there was probably 20 deer on that ridge, and half of them were bedded already by daylight, because that's what happens. They come out of them bean and cornfields, and they get into them hardwoods, and they lay down, and they usually all get up on a ridge where they can see.
Yep.
And they see a movement, and those bucks always bed together out west. They kind of use each other's as a alarm, So I actually had 3 different does come down the trail. I was on a deer trail, just one step, and it was cold, crunchy that morning, so I have to be very, very quiet going in. And I was just every step scanning with my binoculars. I found this one big 8-pointer, and he was about 250 yards away up on this other ridge, and he was really, really wide. He was like that buck I got on the wall, that 26-incher.
Yeah.
I go, damn. I said, I
probably had some time length too, didn't he?
He was good. Yeah, I says, I ought to kill him. I was after that one, but I says, I ought to kill him. So I had it in my mind. I said, yeah, I'll kill him. So I'm sneaking towards this buck, and I finally, about an hour later, I closed the distance. I was about 175 yards from him, and I just leaned out, and I had my binoculars, and there was 3 huge oaks down in this draw, and he was bedded right in behind them. And the minute I looked over like that, he's looking right at me. He already knew I was there. And I went, damn. So I slid, I just leaned back in, dropped my binoculars, slid my shotgun off my shoulder.
Slow.
Real slow. I leaned back out like that, and he was standing up. And I just pulled up to shoot him, and something caught my eye. Well, that buck was laying about 210 yards just up on a hill. There was an old fence there, and it was grown up, and there was a great big cedar like this, and he was laid in under that cedar. The limbs kind of hung down, and I saw him stand up, and I couldn't see his head. And I just looking at him, something made me turn with that scope, and I look, and I could see his rack, and I went, holy shit, that's him. And I didn't even range find it. I just went 200 yards, and I laid that right on the top of his back. And his shoulder kind of was behind the tree. I could see his rack sticking out. I could see the big, heavy tines on him. And then I could see from about halfway of his body back. So I said, if I take him right in the spine. And I just laid that just on the top of his back, and boom, he took off. Thought I missed him. This buck took off, and I'm like, man, I screwed that up. I just passed up this giant 8-pointer, probably 160-inch 8-point, biggest one I'd ever seen. And I said, I missed this other one that's in the 190s, they're telling me. I'm like, damn. So he disappeared immediately, jumped that old fence, and with that old scrub cedar in there. So I worked my way up there, and I went up. First of all, I said, well, maybe that 8-pointer didn't go too far. So I knew he was gone in the thick stuff. So I followed that 8-pointer up over the hill, and he crossed the road. Sometimes they'll go up, and they'll stand there and look back. He crossed the road. He was gone. I said, well, I'll take a walk over there. I said, maybe I hit that other one. I get over there, and I'm looking back at where I was standing, and I'm looking at that cedar, and I said, yeah, he was standing right about here. And I looked down, and I looked up like that, and I looked, and there was 3 maple trees, scrub maples there, and they were just covered with blood. Huh. I went, holy shit, I hit him. And so I started working downhill then, and he dropped in. There was a big one of those drainage ditches out there where they're all washed out and it's full of blowdowns and everything in them, and about 8 feet deep. Well, he tried to jump it and he slammed into a tree on the other side, jumped back across, and there he was folded up.
No way.
Right there, yeah.
Yeah.
So I was just like, I got him.
That was awesome.
Oh yeah, that was great. So that was, 3.5 hour stalk to kill that deer.
Moving how far?
300 yards.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just
Yeah.
the length of that short hardwood ridge where they bedded. And I knew, from being in there previous years, I knew that there was going to be deer bedded there. There always is. So, and like I said, looking on Google Earth, which Onyx nowadays, you can do all that ahead of time and kind of plan out your strategy.
Yep. Where you want to get to, by what time. And
yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting where you said too that they'll kind of watch each other's backs and they'll be together. I noticed last year I checked a camera that was out all winter in a spot that I didn't even hunt, but I went in and checked it. I think in June this year I went in and I was like, oh, let me go check it. And there were 3 bucks in January that came in, and I noticed. And by that point, now they're bachelored back up. They're not rivals anymore. They're friends again.
Right, they're buddies.
You can see them still kind of tickling. They
don't want to kill each other anymore.
But they're still just tickling each other's antlers, right?
Yeah,
and
practicing.
When 2 of them were doing that, I'd watch the other one. He was off, basically looking like he was just standing there and watching, looking out, and then the bigger one would go over and start tickling with him, and that other buck would look out the other way. He's always alert. They were never, one was always watching.
One's always watching.
It was cool.
Yeah. Out west, 99% of the time out west, if I walk into a hardwood ridge somewhere, hunting whitetails, this is Missouri, Iowa, any of those states, Ohio, you walk into a hardwood ridge, that's where those bucks love to bed. They love to bed right on usually the top edge of the ridge, or partway down on a little shelf, and there'll be almost always 2 or 3 or 4, sometimes even a dozen deer spread out. So when you find one,
looking at different sides of the ridge where they can see where the other ones can't see.
And when one runs, the whole herd goes, all of them. And I've seen as many as 20 come out of there at once. And but yeah, when you find one, you wanna be on those binoculars, and like I said, you want to move just slow,
like a sloth,
just like a sloth. Yeah, nothing fast, because they'll pick that movement up. Slow movement, you'd be surprised how close you can get to a buck moving slow, really, really slow. He can be looking at you, and then he'll look away, and you just slowly go into a step. It works.
Something that Rodney Elmer said at Huntstock. I was listening to one of the seminars. I didn't get to catch a lot, but I got footage of it all. So I was watching one of his, and he was saying, I thought this was a cool point. As if you're walking towards a deer, straight towards them, they can't tell really, what you are exactly. As soon as you go sideways, they're like, oh, that's something tall and skinny. That's not a deer. That's not. And then boom, they know that it's danger or could be danger. But when you're walking right at them, you can get away with it.
I tell you what works a lot out west for me is I can think of this one ridge in mind that I hunt all the time when I go to Iowa, this one block woods, and it always has a 180-inch deer in there. You don't hardly ever kill them, but when you do get one, it's pretty nice. But if you walk sideways and don't look at those deer, just kind of like you don't even know they're there, they'll stay bedded and lay right there.
You pretend that you don't
you
know
just pretend.
Yeah.
But you don't, the minute you go out of sight, like if you drop down into a ditch for a second, they're gone. Yeah, they're gone. The minute they lose sight of you, as long as they can keep eyes on you. So if you, sometimes I shot a 10-pointer, right, that one right up there.
Oh, with the tall brow tines?
With a wicked tall brow tines.
I've been looking at him the whole time.
Yeah, so, he's like 154-inch deer. I spotted him and with my muzzleloader, and I spotted him, and I could see his rack, but I couldn't see his body. Couldn't get a shot at him. And he was too far away to actually get a shot if he stood up and ran or anything. And I watched him with binoculars. He was locked right onto me. He knew I was there. So I just turned, and I started walking at like a 45, kind of towards him, and I stayed right in the open. and I just watched him out of the corner of my eye.
Yeah.
I closed the distance to about 160 yards, and then I slid my gun off my shoulder, looking the other direction, and I swung around like that. The minute I did that, he stood up, and boom, I killed him.
That's
killed
so
him right in
awesome,
his
though.
bed.
See, because that is an instinctual thing that you have to know, and a lot of people, you got to know that. Yeah, and people say, "Oh, don't make eye contact with a doe coming in on your bow."
Nobody taught me that. I just learned that over the years, and I don't know if many people know this, but my 5th great grandfather from Texas was Quanah Parker, which was a Comanche Indian chief.
I know that name.
Yeah. He was my great grandfather.
No way.
He married Annie Parker, which was my grandmother's great grandmother.
No way.
And her name was Annie Bulmer, married my grandfather, and her original name was Annie Ratliff, so she was named after her grandmother. So
that's crazy.
And everybody, especially my grandfather, always told me all these years. He said, "You got that Indian blood from Quanah in you." He said, "There's no doubt."
He's known for being kind of a liaison to the white man, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like he was.
Yeah. He actually moved into a big white house. He built a mansion. He was like the Comanche, most well-known Comanche Indian chief ever. And there's a book about him called Rising of the Summer Moon. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's about. So he's my grandfather, great grandfather.
Wow.
So maybe a little bit of his blood's come back around.
Oh, I'm sure. I mean,
yeah.
You got to spend.
Because there was really nobody else in my family that was a tracker ever, and I just came about it naturally. I just lived to do it, loved to do it, and I hunt so many places every year. I've built myself a great business, and I just had in mind when I get older, all I want to do is hunt.
Yeah.
So I worked my butt off building my business when I was younger, and I'm at the point now, I bought my cabin out in Wyoming. I got my own cabin out there, and we go out west quite a bit, as much as we can, and spend a week here and there, and do a lot of elk hunting and mule deer hunting and all that. So, I just had the perfect life, really.
No kidding. On the way here, I was listening to a podcast, the Meat Eater podcast they did with what's the guy's name? Burns. He does all the documentaries and stuff, and he's got a new Ken Burns. He's got a documentary coming out on the American buffalo, bison buffalo.
Right.
And they mentioned Quanah Parker.
They did.
Oh, I heard his name on the way up here, and I forget exactly how he was mentioned. But I also know him from history. But that's super cool. And I don't know how many people know that.
I never really even paid attention to it. When I was younger, they'd tell me I was part Indian and all that stuff, which I don't even look, it's like 5-6 generations ago now. But, and I didn't stop paying attention to it until I was almost in my late 40s, after my grandmother passed away. And then my grandfather really started telling me. And then I started remembering some of them stories she told about him and her grandfathers in Texas, how they'd hunt and they'd catch catfish. Her father would hold the grandfather by the legs, and he'd go in under the riverbank and come out with a 25-pound catfish. They called it noodling. Yeah. And they deer hunted, but they always, sat on stands down there and stuff like that. So, but I mean, it's funny how, he met my grandmother. They ended up here in Maine, where it's the best tracking, and then I was born, and it's just like when you think back about all this little stuff that happened, it all happened for a reason.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
And so you just, you think about just history and how certain people are, how did he happen to grow up there, and I think things happen for a reason like that. I really do.
100% do.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting, too. Like 2 years ago, I was bow hunting and just creeping through a CRP field, on a high wind day. Yeah. And when it's super windy, I don't like to be in a tree. I was just creeping through the CRP field.
Yeah, and when it's windy, they like to lay out in those CRP fields.
Yeah, they do.
Yep.
Yeah, and I got to a spot where the stream crossing, and I heard a bush shaking. I'm looking over, I can see the bush. The bush is shaking. Ends up being a 10-pointer making a rub on this bush, and I can just see his tines, slowly making his way towards me. And when the wind would blow, the grass would get low enough every once in a while I could see his whole head.
Oh, yeah.
And he's getting real close. And,
Right.
Well, he got so close that I was like, he's either going to step out there and I can make a shot, and that's what I'm waiting for him to do. But he stayed in one spot, and then he started kind of doubling back down the stream. So when I decided I got to go down to the stream bed and walk up, maybe it'll be a more open shot in the stream bed. I get down to that. Of course, the wind dies down when I do that. He hears me. He jumps off. I go around knowing this part. It's just a log road, but it's pretty much all grassy. It's super quiet walking on that.
Yeah.
And I know the direction he was going. I knew where that log road went around, so I beat feet on that as he bounced down. It was super windy again. I was like, maybe I can cut him off before he gets where I think he's going. So I'm going really fast. I'm going so fast and thinking that I beat him, but he was already had beat me and crossed it. But he was standing there broadside in an opening. Like you said, though, I knew if I stopped at that moment, when I saw him broadside, he was only 15 yards off of this trail.
Right.
And he's broadside there, and he's watching me go super fast.
Yeah, he
knew
you hadn't seen him yet, right?
I'm screwed. He's gone.
Right.
So I just kept going as fast as I could while drawn. Like I didn't even have an arrow quivered.
Yep.
Pulled the arrow out, kept walking really fast, loaded it, and then I'm thinking, as soon as I stop, I know he's gonna bolt. But I got past the opening, and there was a couple of bushes in front of me. I went past that to where there was another opening, stopped and turned. It's like what you said, but he was gone. I didn't have a chance at it, but just he let me walk right by, 15 yards away.
Yeah,
as long as you don't stop.
Yeah, I've had a lot of bucks over the years that not tracking them, but just still hunting, like you said, or even out west. A lot of bucks over the years, and I actually almost walked by them, and they're just standing there, gonna let you go right by. Why would you run and let that guy know you're there?
Yeah.
And so you just kind of, instead of stopping quick, because you're going to create a reaction, and they're going to run, and chances are you don't have a shot.
Yeah.
And you just kind of nonchalantly keep walking, slide your gun off, get ready, and swing. Yeah. So it works.
Yeah, I tried that with some doe that were bedded too.
Yeah.
In the same type of place.
Yeah.
I saw them out of the corner of my eye, and they were bedded right off the trail. And I was like, oh, maybe I'll be able to do that. But at that time I had an arrow quivered already.
Yeah.
I mean, I had an arrow knocked already.
Yeah.
Picked up my bow as I was walking, and tried to kind of keep walking, but turn while I was still walking. And they got up, but. Yeah. They did let me walk right by until they saw me turning towards them. They knew something was going on.
We had a day up in Jackman this was back, 20 years ago, and we couldn't find a buck track. The wind, you talked about the wind blowing. The wind was blowing like 40 miles an hour that day. And this old logger, Reggie Griffin, he's well known in Jackman. And he was cutting down towards Addy in there, and we called it the mining road, and we couldn't find a buck track. When it's blowing hard like that, nothing moves. So it was probably like 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I told Dad, I said, we had probably 1.5 feet of snow by then. It was almost pushing it with a bumper. I said, let's take a ride down the mining road, make that big loop. I said, maybe something got up and moved. So we head down the mining road, and Reggie was cutting down towards the lake. And come along, and there's this giant buck track. You could see him dragging along, going. And we got out, looked at it. Blown right in. Dad says, how do you know where he's going? I said, well, they're cutting down there. I'm pretty sure he's headed down where they're cutting. He says, I'm going to stay right here on the back track and wait. He says, I ain't leaving the truck. And like you said, it was cold.
Yeah.
So I got on his track, and I headed down in there. And I was still kind of wondering if I was on him in the right direction, because he could have fed and gone up and laid down. So I get down in there, and he got down in, and you could hear the saw rig running, zzz, zzz, and he was laying trees down. I was probably only 100 yards from that guy, but I'm on the back side, and he was laying all those tops down, and that buck was just right on there, and he was feeding on those tops. So I said, yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm going the right way. Pretty soon I come to a bed right there, and the wind was blowing so hard, Pat, that it was snapping the tops of the spruce off. Like every 3 or 4 minutes, snap, one would break. Well, I come to 5 different beds in a row. I had my gun right to my shoulder the whole time. I said, he's right here. I know he's right here. And I'm just weaving in around those tops. Well, pretty soon, it got down into this dark black spruce, which, that spruce was only growing 2 feet apart. And it just got really dark in there where they hadn't got into the cut yet.
Yeah.
Well, he went in there to lay down. because it made him so nervous out here. So he went right into that dark spruce in that wind. So I'm kind of walking along in that dark spruce, and like I said, it went from being light out to really, really dim in that spruce. And I just went to take a step, and I looked, and there's his ass. Literally 3 feet from me. And I pulled up, and I should have just shot him right in the backbone. I would have killed him.
Yeah.
Right there.
Yeah.
The minute I pulled up like that, he heard my jacket or something move, and he swung his head, and he started to slowly get up, and his ass come off the ground, and he stretched his neck out, and I went, boom! And I just instantly switched and shot for his neck. I grazed him, cut the hair off. I had like 3 little specks of blood. He ran off, probably weighed 250. He was one of them. But he had a really tight rack. Old buck.
That's how he got into those spruces.
Yeah,
like
he
that.
did, yeah. Oh, tight rack, but cool-looking deer, though, real heavy. That one I call fat horns that I shot like Hal's years ago. We both shot a fat horn buck, we called it. I think he's in that pile.
Fat horn year.
Yeah. But anyway, I don't see it real quick, but we'll look for it.
That's a monster there.
Yeah, them are sheds, yeah. Them I had them scored this year. They made the book. But he run off, and I chased him all day, and I'll tell you something. Whenever you get that close to a whitetail during the day, you are never going to see him again the rest of the day. Every big buck that I've ever been within 10 feet of, I've never laid eyes on him the rest of the day again. They don't want nothing to do with you. Yeah. So he got away.
You got close enough that they're...
Yeah. I went on another track, and I'll grab that muzzleloader right there and show you.
Yeah, grab it.
Yeah. This is back, I don't know, when muzzleloaders first come out, my grandfather bought this as a kit, and I put it together at his house.
Hold that so you get...
I put this together, and my uncle actually did this carbon on it, Danny. And this was the first muzzleloader I ever had, old percussion cap, flintlock, 50 caliber Hawken. It was one of those kits. So I was up in the mountains up above Solden, and we had 2 or 3 feet of snow that day. And we headed up there, and it was one of the very first muzzleloader seasons in Maine that we ever had. And I had this gun and had no idea what a muzzleloader would do or if it would even go off, which we found out they didn't go off 99% of the time.
Yep.
And so the wind was blowing wicked hard, and we came to this buck track crossing the road, and he went down into this swamp on the right. And I got onto his track. And Dad, same thing, because lots of times in big bucks, they'll run right out the back track, And he says, I'll stand here by the truck. He had his muzzleloader. So I started in with this muzzleloader, wind blowing, everything, and I got in. I didn't go very far, and I come in, and there was 5 of these big poplar trees that had all blown down.
Yep.
And they were all laid, like when they blow down, they usually go down in bunches here in Maine woods, and they got very shallow root systems, so the stumps are laid up. And I'm looking at that mess, and it's all cedar swamp blowdowns. And that buck kind of went in between them stumps. And I'm thinking, and it was all limbs in there, and I'm thinking, man. And I looked, I couldn't really get around either side. It was so thick. I said, I'll jump right on that tree. I'll just jump on that tree and walk right up that tree. I used to do that when I was younger all the time, walk on trees everywhere. And I jumped up, and I'm on that tree, and I'm carrying this muzzleloader. I got it in my hand. And I'm kind of walking along that tree, and I'm looking where I'm going, and I look down below me, and he's laying right in them limbs. And
you're on the tree above him?
I'm on the tree above him. I'm
Yep.
about 6
Yep.
feet above this buck, and
Yeah.
and he reminded me of my big 242-pound 8-pointer, really wide, heavy beams. And I swung onto him, and cap went off. That was it. And man, the minute that cap went off, scared the shit out of him. So he bails out of there. He comes jumping right up at eye level.
No way.
Yeah, and there was all these young, like maple or popples growing in amongst where those blowdowns were. His rack was so wide, when he come up, his left beam hooked onto a tree, and it flipped him right around, and he started going in circles. So
Just spinning around.
Yeah, so I immediately switched ends, and I was swinging. And I missed him by like an inch. Yeah. I missed him by an inch.
Oh, with that brass butt plate there, that probably would have knocked him out.
That's what I was hoping for. I knew that gun weren't going to go off, but...
So what happened? He just kept spinning? And then eventually he got loose and took out of there, or what?
Just as I was into my swing, he come loose like that, and he figured out he was loose, and he just bolted. And like I said, when I was through my swing, he was going away, and I missed him, and his friggin' eyeballs were that big looking at me. I could see him, I mean, literally arm's length away swinging with that muzzleloader. And that I was pretty upset that day when I come out. I said, these damn muzzleloaders. I said, I'm never going to use one of these again. I use them all the time. I love them.
Yeah, but not like that with the open.
No, not the. But I used that for quite a few years till they come out with the disc rifle. Then I had the night disc rifle.
Yeah.
Then I actually killed a big buck up by Harris Dam, and I shot him with that disc rifle, and he didn't die. And I chased him around this bog. I hit him right in the head, and he didn't die. I have no idea this day. I mean, it went right into his brain, and I actually clubbed him over the head with a muzzleloader a couple of times. Then I picked a birch log up, clubbed him over the head with that. I finally got a hold of that.
You ran out of bullets, didn't you, at one point?
No, them old night muzzleloaders, the bolt mechanism, it was like a bolt inside of a bolt, and it was spring-loaded.
Yep.
And if they didn't line up,
you
couldn't slide it in and actually caulk it. So when he come running back down over the hill after I hit him, he come flipping down over this ridge, and I was like, holy cow, and I got kind of hurrying, and I pulled the bolt right out by mistake, and it come unsnapped.
Yeah.
And I couldn't get it back in.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'd had a Leatherman or anything, I could have got it back, but I couldn't get it back in. So I was out there trying to kill him for an hour. And that buck's walking around. He chased me out of that bog 3 or 4 times, had his horns right in my butt twice.
Jeez.
And I got pictures of that whole bog where he walked around for an hour. It's just a maze of blood trail. And that deer never laid down. He stood up the entire time.
He had a bullet in his head?
Had a bullet in his head. 50 caliber muzzle-loaded bullet in his head.
So was he kind of, did he seem like he was slow and out of it a little bit, or was he like...
When I'd go up on the bank, there was like a ledge. That bog was like in the pocket in these ledges, and it was like firs, and I shot him running out of the bog, and he come back down over the ridge when I hit him in the head. And so he couldn't jump out of it. He just didn't have enough strength, and when I didn't come after him, he would just stand there with his head down, and then I'd go after him, and he'd start walking around.
No way.
Oh, yeah, for an hour.
So he was standing when you were hitting him with your muzzleloader?
Yeah.
He was standing there.
Standing there.
He never got
but
off
when
his
it,
feet?
first time I hit him, he turned it around, and he had his horns right in my butt, and he pushed me right out of that bog. I mean, I was run for all I was worth because he was after me.
He pushed you hard.
Pushed me hard. And I come up out of that bog. Well, then I picked this birch log up, and I struck him over the head with that birch log. That almost did him in, but it still didn't kill him.
Jeez.
So we had these, back then, we had these old Motorola radios, and I had radioed Dad, and I said, yeah, I got him. I says, he's not dead. And I said, bring your muzzleloader. I said, I messed mine up. And Dad was thinking, he's going to die, you know. He hit him in the head, and I told him on the radio. Well, it was like an hour by the time he got all the way to the truck. We had a snowmobile in the truck because we had so much snow that year. By the time he got to the truck, got the snowmobile unloaded, came all the way around, and I told him where I was, and I could hear the sled coming like an hour later, and I ran out and stopped him in the trail, and I grabbed his muzzleloader, and we both ran in there, and boom, I finished him off. So, and Dad was like, you got to take pictures of all this. He goes, this is unbelievable. He says, it's hard to believe.
You got pictures of that in here somewhere?
I do somewhere in one of the photo albums.
Maybe when we end here, I can zoom in on that, because that'll be great for the story.
Oh, man, yeah. That was probably the toughest
insane.
buck I ever killed in my life right there.
And where he's somewhere in here, you said?
He's in this pile.
Yep.
Yeah. He's an 8-pointer that I call fat horns. But I real quick, I don't know if I can see him, but
no, you're gonna risk messing your pile up there.
Yeah, that's all right. But
we'll get a
he's
picture
in there somewhere. Yeah. But yeah, he was probably the toughest. Them whitetails they're the toughest animal on the face of the earth as far as I'm concerned. As far as fighting for survival, it's crazy.
They're your favorite game animal?
Yeah. That
I know it's tough. It's tough to put a favorite on.
That
right?
and an elk. I mean, I think elk hunting. I just love elk hunting. Hearing an elk bugle and being up in those mountains out in Wyoming and anywhere out west, and at daylight seeing the sun come up and, you know, the fog laying in the mountains and being up in those rivers. I mean, you're in no man's land up in there. I was 9 miles back in last week by horseback, and we never saw another soul.
Oh, yeah.
The whole week.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's nothing better than that as far as I'm concerned. I could do that all the time if I could do it. But
Well, I think aren't you getting close to being ready to retire or what? You said when I get older, I want to be able to hunt. Are you older yet?
I got half the business for sale right now, so if any of you guys out there want to get into construction, and I'll tell you right now, it's been the best life for me. If I had a chance, people ask me, they say, would you do what you did all over again? I said, absolutely, 100%. I worked outside every day. I was working all over Maine. I mean, I'd pick my jobs, you know, doing, whether it's camps up north in the woods, building tote roads for loggers, you name it. I was in an excavator or a dozer every day doing what I loved, building rock walls. You're never stuck on one job too long. I'm moving from one place to the other. So, and I just, my whole life, I loved to get up and go to work every morning. I just couldn't wait. I'd go to work till sometimes 10, 11 at night and roll in the driveway here. And we did it all, commercial jobs, water mains, everything. And so I got half of it for sale. I don't think I can totally retire. I got to keep busy in the summer. So
yeah,
I'm going to sell half of everything.
Well, you can go fishing though.
Yeah.
Well,
I'll dub around.
Something tells me you always find the time to do whatever you love to do anyway. Fishing in the summertime.
You have to do the things you want to do in life as you grow, because you can't wait till you retire. You just can't do that, because you never know when time's going to run out.
Yep.
You know, you just don't. And then when you get that age, who knows if your hips or your knees or whatever are going to work. I mean, I'm pretty fortunate. I'm still in good shape. I got one bad knee, but I've been going and getting some actually stem cell shots in my knee, and it's helped me out a lot.
Where are you getting that done?
Right down in Portland.
I didn't know you could do it in the States right now.
Yeah. QC Kinetics. And I'll tell you, my knee, I walked 32 miles this last week in the mountains in Wyoming, and I was up at 10,000 feet, and didn't even faze me. It's working great. So 2 years ago, I had torn this shoulder snowmobiling, and the same guy gave me shots in the shoulder and grew my muscle all back, and I never had to have surgery. So it's been great.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard people talking about how good stem cells are.
I'm a true believer in that stuff, but rather than surgery, I think you kind of, you know, taking a gamble.
Yeah.
50-50. It might work and it might not. If it works right now, I'm not going to take the gamble that it won't.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Still in good shape, though. One bad knee, which is getting better, one bad shoulder. And what happened to your finger there? It looks like you lost some from the knuckle
yeah,
up.
that was a Harley-Davidson crash when I was younger. I've ridden motorcycles. My grandfather did, too. He had like 17 Harley-Davidsons in his life. And I got a picture of him on the wall on one of his old Harleys. And he used to ride down through Oakland standing on the seat. He'd get up. That was when it was gravel roads, and he'd stand on the seat and ride down through town on Main Street. Then one day the local cop stopped him and told him, he says, I better not catch you doing that again. He said, I better not do that anymore. So, and I always had motorcycles. He kind of got me into it, bought me a little Honda 50 when I was like 5 years old. I always had a dirt bike or something constantly growing up. I was riding every night in the summer. I'd get home, ride all through the whole country there, all the farms, everything. And I love dirt bikes and snowmobiles and all that. And so I ended up getting in a motorcycle crash when I was like 19.
Wow.
Yeah, lost that finger and pretty near died, but
really,
I made it. Yeah.
That was the only thing that happened. Oh, well, you must have had other things happen, but
yeah. I had a huge scar on my face, which is kind of faded away now. Tore this kneecap right off, which this is my good knee. So, you know,
how about that?
I was lucky. Yeah. But yeah, I still ride motorcycles today. I got a Harley out I got a CVO out in my hot
What were you
garage.
doing? Did you do something wrong, or you were being a little dangerous or daredevil-y, or
I
something just happened?
I think I was doing a wheelie down Cool Street in Waterville. Pretty sure I was. Yeah. 19 years old, you're indestructible.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. All the stuff our parents tell us we shouldn't be doing.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, we've been going for, I think, 2.5 hours. I told you time flies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You want to hear any more buck stories? Or?
Yeah, if you want to, let's end with one more.
Yeah.
If you
all
got
right.
one you want to
Yeah.
hone in on.
Yeah. Maybe I'll tell. I don't know if I should. You want to hear a Canada story, or do you want to hear a Maine buck story?
Why don't we two? We can do both of them.
All right. So we were up in Ontario there with my buddy Vince Dostey and my buddy Sandy. I don't know. It was probably 10 years ago now. And of course, Ontario, you can party hunt, so you can actually shoot your buddy's deer legally up there. So we're in Ontario. We'd been hunting all week. Sandy had shot a really big 10-pointer beauty, and we got him drug out. And we were staying at this set of camps, and we hired this guy with a boat to take us up these lakes. So he'd take us up these lakes like 8 or 10 miles from nowhere and just drop us off on the back of these lakes, and we'd just hunt these mountains. And it was phenomenal deer hunting. There was bucks everywhere. Sign like you wouldn't believe, just deer trails intersecting each other, and, deer sign like I'd never seen before. So we finally got some snow. We went up there, and it was, I don't know, the second to the last day of the hunt. And I'd passed a lot of bucks up. I wanted a pretty good one, so... And Vince was a sitter. Vince always sat. He never tracked. So I always put Vince in a good spot. So we come back that night, and I says, Vince, I got a perfect spot for you. I says, there's like an old, almost like a stone wall. I don't know if it was or not, but I said, almost like a stone wall there. And I said, there's 5 deer trails coming together. I said, it's just like a wagon wheel intersection. I says, one of the best spots I ever found. I said, if you sit there tomorrow, I said, guaranteed to see a buck. He's like, yeah, okay. So we head up that lake by boat, and we get in there, and we hike up over that mountaintop, and we get to that deer trail. I had it marked on my GPS, and right there was a smashing buck track, and he was headed downhill. And I said, you sit right here. And I said, I'm going to get on that track. And I says, I'm going to try to either kill him or maybe he'll come back around. Okay, he says. So get on that buck track, and I tracked him quite a ways, about an hour, and pretty soon I looked up, and there's Vince. And he had made a circle. Yeah. I wasn't paying attention to compass or anything. I was just on his track all day. And there's Vince. And I got up to him. I said, did you see that buck? No. I said, you fall asleep? I don't think so.
I don't think so.
I said, you might have snoozed off for a minute. So, because that track was smoking hot then, and he was in our boot tracks.
Yeah.
So I no more than left him, and I come over, and there was like a little ledge outcropping right there, and I heard a grunt. So I grabbed my grunt tube, and I grunted, and this 10-pointer comes running out of the brush, like 243 pounds he was, and boom, I shot him, cranked another one, boom, shot him. He ran back in, and he runs right back out again, and boom, I shot him again, and he went down. So Vince comes over. Pretty soon he hears the shooting. He comes over, and he goes, you get him? I said, yeah. I said, Cocker. I said, beauty of a 10-pointer. So he gets down there, and we start taking some pictures and stuff, and Vince wanders off for a minute. He comes back. He said, what are you going to do with that one over there? I said, what? He says, yeah, you got one just like him over there. He says, identical. I said, well, probably that one's yours then. You're going to tag that one. Okay.
I thought that's where this one was going. Yeah.
So shot 2 10-pointers in about 5 seconds.
Yeah.
There must have been a hot doe there, and when I heard that grunt.
Yep.
And they were just running back and forth. And
yep.
Yeah, that's the way it happens. But
that's funny.
Luckily, we were in Ontario, and
party hunt.
You could party hunt, yeah. So we both got 10-pointers that morning. Drug them down to the lake. It was all downhill, and loaded them in the boat.
Oh, couldn't be better, huh?
Oh, it was great. We'd go up that lake in the morning, and it would go down into the 20s at night, and there'd be like a half-inch of ice. And that guy had a 70-horse Yamaha on that open aluminum boat. Yep. We'd be friggin' bundled up, hats down over your ears, and just breaking ice. And the ice would be flying across that frozen ice for 100 yards while we're cutting right up through that stream. Then it would thaw out during the day, and he'd come back and get us at night.
That's awesome.
Yeah, we had fun hunting in Ontario. That used to be phenomenal deer hunting.
Then the wolves.
Yeah, the wolves
Yeah,
came in. There
yeah.
weren't many wolves when I started going there, but there's a lot of wolves now. Yeah, so here's a good Maine story. The old game warden, Feeney, up in Jackman there, Glenn Feeney, and this is back, I don't know, 20 years ago now. So you'd run into Glenn quite a bit, and he'd check you out. I think he knew I was pretty legit, and he said he followed me quite a few times, and he never caught up with me. And he made the comment to me one day. He goes, "You're serious?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm pretty serious." So I went into this spot up on the side of a mountain that I always hunted, and there was a bunch of strip cuts there. I told Dad, I said, because Dad was my hunting partner all my life, and I said, let's go up in there and hunt the side of that mountain. And I said, I'm going to see if I can get on a track. And there was about 2 inches of snow. And I said, once you go down by that end, there's an old tow road there. And I said, stand on that road. I said, maybe I'll drive one out or something. So I went up. Sure enough, I come into this old plantation. It was all them Norway pines, and they were about 10 feet tall. And there was deer tracks everywhere. And there was this one huge smashing buck track. And I said, geez, I said, he's right here. So I just started sneaking up to the pines, and all of a sudden I hear hooves going. So I ran down at my left, and I just caught a glimpse of a doe going out. The buck had gone. So I worked my way over there, and sure enough, there's that buck track, and they're all headed downhill, and there was a big swamp down there. So this was when one of the first bucks I ever left his track and killed. So I thought real quick, I said, and the doe had run this way, and the buck had looped downhill all by himself. The first thing I thought, I said, he's going to go right back with that doe. So I started following that doe, and I ran a little bit to kind of get ahead to make the distance up. Yep. And it's a good thing I did. So I'm working my way down that doe track, and I started to slow down, and I got in. There was a little bit of an alder swamp there. I could see a little swale and some swale grass and some alders, and I'm working my way along, and all of a sudden I caught a glimpse of something, and I just held up for a minute, and that buck up there that I showed you, that 11-pointer that weighed 250.
Yeah.
Well, he come working his way, just kind of trotting right along, headed back for that doe, and headed right back up across that bog for that doe. And when he got clear of those alders, boom, I put one in him. Well, he run, still headed to the doe, and boom, I put another one in him. He finally went down. So Dad heard me shooting. I was dressing him out, and he showed up. And he said, geez, that's a cocker. And I was kind of disappointed of his rack, as usual, but I knew he was heavy. He was long deer, like 10 feet long when we hung him up. And we drug him out, got him out, and we run into Glenn the next day. Dad was hunting, and I was with him, and Glenn told me, he says, you shot my buck. I said, well, I don't know. I guess he had his eye on him anyway, but
you don't own any of these bucks, you know.
No.
You can get into
all
one.
good stories though.
Oh,
those, you know, everybody got along good, and you know.
Yep.
Yeah. So, yeah, there's a lot of them. There's a lot of good stories of bucks that I never killed that were all learning lessons up there. I had this other buck called Slewfoot that I nicknamed him because his track, he had broken his toe.
Yeah.
So one laid ahead of the other, just like your fingers like that. So it looked like a slough, you know. So I nicknamed him Slewfoot. And that was back when the Benoits were hunting there. And I was pretty good friends with Lane. Lane used to pick me up a lot walking and give me a ride back to my camp and stuff. He had a Chevy Blazer there. And we got to be friends. He'd come down and had supper with me a few times at camp, me and Dad. Laney did too. And so I'm following that buck up in this mountaintop, and I come to this clear cut that was like 400 yards by 400 yards, this huge clear cut. And I cranked my scope up. Back then I was hunting with a 30-06 7400 and with a Bushnell 3-9. I was in my early 20s then. And so I scanned that clear cut because I was on that buck, and I knew he wasn't very far ahead of me. So I scanned that clear cut, and it was full of those raspberry bushes and growth. So just kind of looking, didn't see him. Well, I took back off on the track, forgot to crank my scope back down. I no more than got across that clear cut. He turned left, and he went right up onto this mountaintop. And it was like a big rock slide to the right of it, and there was a bunch of spruce to the left.
Yep.
And so you might know where it is. It's not far off 201. But anyway, I start up in there, and I come to these two moose bedded, these two cows. And I looked, and I thought, man, he didn't bother them moose much. You could tell they'd been laying there for a while. And the minute I took one step, he was laying above those moose. So he kind of used those moose as a cover, an alarm.
Yeah.
And the minute he jumped up, and he literally had like 5 hops to get away from me. And he's in these short furs, and he's just jumping. And as soon as I get him in the scope, he'd go out of it. And I couldn't, and I didn't realize what happened till he was gone. And I had it on 9 power. And Lane killed him the next day.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, he did. He killed him. He goes, I killed Slowfoot. He says, I got him, had him on top of his blazer.
Nice.
It's like, damn, yeah. He was
Well,
like
at least you got to...
225 he weighed, something like that. Yeah. I got to see him anyway, in the flesh.
Do you use a scope now, or are you open sight, or what when you're tracking?
I use...
in Maine.
Yeah, everywhere out west I use a scope. I've been a scope guy my entire life. I love a scope. I'm fast with a scope. I never miss with a scope because a scope is fine-tuned. Last year I started using a peep sight again. I kind of talked myself into it. And I used to use just buckhorn sights, and I did pretty good with those tracking on snow. And that peep sight, I'm just not a peep sight guy. Never have been. I missed that buck twice last year in a row, and then I finally killed him, and I said, that's it. So I've gone to one of those halogenic, and I actually bought the Halison, and I bought the pistol sight, the halogenic pistol sight, so the window comes all the way out. There's not a hood there to catch snow.
Yep.
And I've been, I used it this last winter, bobcat hunting some, and it's fast. I just love it. My buddy Sandy's been using it for 9 years, and it's fast. So I would recommend that Halison or any of those halogenic sights to anybody out there. Once you get used to that, there's no going back. You're just looking at red dots right there. Wherever you got your eye or your shoulder, if that red dot's on that deer, you're going to hit him.
Yep.
Yep. So that's my choice.
And pump gun, right? Seven.
Yeah. I use on bare ground, I use a Brown and long track, 30-06. 30-06 has always been my caliber in Maine my whole life. And on snow, I got my 7600 pump, and I got a 760 pump. I got 3 of them. So I usually I got a black synthetic one, which I like, which is my 7600, and then the old 760 is the wood one. I use that one quite a bit. It shoots good. Yeah, I just had it set up. I'll show you that when we get done.
Okay.
Yeah. Nice little setup.
So real quick, let's talk about, since this is going to be a little separate series that I'm going to start doing. I do a podcast on the road, try to get a hunt in somewhere, no matter what season it is. Right now it's archery, so I brought my bow up. But if I do this again somewhere else, I'll try to get a sit somewhere else.
After you kill a big buck tonight, you'll be back.
I hope so. Yeah, so let's talk about, we don't have to name names or anything, but I was going to try to find a piece up here, that wasn't posted, or because most of it's all, there's no public land within these expanded archery zones, really, is there?
Not really. There's hardly any public land, and any public land we got around here is you're kind of on a draw system. You got to go to the police department, put your name in, and 20 guys get to hunt this month. And just a lot of the guys I know that do it, they say you climb up in the stand and you're looking at a guy, like 1 or 2 guys. And so that's not any fun.
No.
But, so I, being a contractor my whole life, I know all these big developers around. And so I got this one friend, I won't mention his name because everybody will be calling him and he'll kill me. So, but he's got several big 100, 150, 200 acre tracts of land out around Waterville and Winslow. And so I'm going to take Patrick out and put him on what I think is the best piece tonight. And
that's just awesome.
Yeah, and I built all the roads in there. So, and one thing about building roads, when you're building roads, you show up in the morning after you've run your bulldozer through and there's big buck tracks all through the gravel. You're like, damn, I ought to be hunting out here, but it's still in the city. And So back when I used to bow hunt a lot, I hunted some of those spots. I shot some pretty decent bucks. But there are some monsters out around town here because they just don't have the hard winters. They get fed all winter.
Yep. And it's harder to hunt them. I mean,
yeah,
right? Usually.
Yeah.
Where I come from,
it's
harder
absolutely harder to hunt them. Yeah.
It's tons of guys, and I don't know. In Massachusetts, you've got all these different. The setback law is 500. You got to be 500 feet from a dwelling.
Yeah, it's 100 yards here in Maine. 100 feet from a dwelling. Yeah.
100 feet or yards? 100 feet?
100 yards.
100 yards. 300 feet. Yeah. That's still bad. It's 167 yards in Mass.
Yeah. It's 300 feet here, 100 yards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you can't hunt with a gun around the cities here, can you? Can you gun hunt those expanded archery places?
You can't. Yeah, because you ain't allowed to shoot within city limits. Yeah. I think it's a mile from town hall, whenever they draw. Yeah. Yeah. So. Usually any of them places that you can actually hunt in the city aren't expanded. You know, they don't qualify under the expanded zone.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, there's some good spots out there with some really big deer, and like I said, I run into them during November. I'm down here working, and I'm seeing these giant buck tracks where I'm running, but I'm headed up north 2 hours or hour and a half away to go hunt a different buck.
Yeah.
Yeah. They probably got better racks down here, but you know, usually they're more fun to hunt, track them up the mountains and.
Yeah, you only got one tag, so you're not going to do any archery hunting down here. But no, but I appreciate it because it'll be fun. This will be my first actual sit of the year, really hunting.
Yeah.
So the plan is you're just going to show me the spot, and I'm going to just do a little scout my way in and find a good spot to set my saddle up in.
I think this spot sets up high on, and there's a huge fields, like 150, 200 acre field. And then it goes down by a stream, and it's a bunch of hemlocks in there, and it's wicked hummocks in there. I've hunted in there.
They're bedding down in there.
Yeah, I used to bow hunt in there. Yeah, and you got that big stream. That stream's probably 8 feet, 10 feet deep. So they don't cross it. They'll bed right along that stream, and then they just bed there during the day, and then they run all those fields. And what they do is at night they'll run the fields, cross the main roads. They're eating in all these neighbors' apple trees, eating clover off their lawns. You know, they got free range of everything at night.
Yeah. So are the fields just fields, or are they planted with crops, or
they're just fields, pretty much CRP now, you know, unless somebody mows it. Nobody farms much anymore around here. It's all gone away. It's kind of sad, but we got one farmer down the road from me here, Chartrans, and we buy all our beef off him, and he's got one of the last dairy farms around, beef cattle. Yeah. But it's trying, you know, it's a whole different game trying to figure out those suburban bucks, you know, in the cities and stuff. Yeah. I mean, it's challenging. It's just as much fun, really, to outsmart them because they're pretty wise to humans.
Yeah. Oh, they are. And that buffer that you talk about, you know, they let you get to 100 yards in the big woods. You know, that might be a little shorter in the suburbs, but they still keep a big buffer. They don't let you walk right up to them.
Like I was telling you in the morning, if you don't have any success tonight, in the morning I always had my best luck getting in the woods, out of the fields, because there's so much traffic. Everybody's going to work in the morning, except during the rut. But this time of year, they're already back in the woods, so they're doing all their milling around until they lay down. Yeah. That first couple hours, get down into the woods, get on a good crossing. Yeah. Good bottleneck or something.
I'll probably still get into the woods a little bit, but not,
right.
Keep the field within sight. But
a lot of them big bucks, they'll actually come out and just skirt the edges and look out there about 20, 30 feet in. I've watched them, bow hunting for years. I used to watch them bucks, and they wouldn't even come out till that last light. They'd just kind of skirt the edge, and I shot a lot of bucks with my bow doing that.
Yeah. So that'll be fun. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. Yeah, hopefully you kill one tonight and we bring him back and skin him out.
That's the goal, and that would be a pleasure, and that would be a memory for a lifetime if that can happen. And so I really appreciate you coming on, Rick.
All right, I appreciate you coming up, man.
We'll do it again sometime.
Great podcast, and it was good talking, and it was a lot of fun.
Yep. Well, thanks again.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.
This episode is brought to you by Huntstock, America's reinvented hunting show and the world's largest deer camp. Visit www.huntstockevents.com for more details. We hope to see you there.